Chapter 663. Kill. The Dragon Tiger Emperor, the Ancient Emperor, and the Fighting Sky Emperor gave the order coldly when they heard the Thunderclap Emperor's words. Rumble. It was the experts of the four superpowers. They were attacking the barrier of the Holy Dragon Sect's Imperial City under the lead of their respective Ancient Emperors. As for the Dragon Tiger Emperor and the other three Ancient Emperors, they did not take any action. Without Qin Yu overseeing the Sacred Dragon Sect, there was no need for them to act. They could easily destroy it. Of course, there was another reason why they did not take any action. They were wary of Qin Yu's strength. After all, to be able to kill a late-stage Ancient Emperor by himself, Qin Yu's strength was not to be underestimated. Although the four of them had teamed up, they did not dare to let their guard down. They maintained their peak condition and were prepared to suppress Qin Yu, who could appear at any time. Sect Master, based on the strength of the four superpowers, we will not be able to hold on for long. Is the Holy Master not back yet? Seeing the ferocious attacks of the four superpowers, the people of the Holy Dragon Sect panicked. They did not have the vigor they had when they took down the seven-star ancient country and the Tianyuan divine dynasty. The barrier of the Imperial City was set up by the Holy Master. It will not be easy for them to break it. Pass down the order. Everyone is to guard their positions. If anyone escapes, kill them. Pan Hong sneered as he looked at the four superpowers. As long as Qin Yu returned, these four great powers would become turtles in a jar. Only death would await them. The Holy Master has already predicted this, so he has already made arrangements. You don't need to be so worried. Once this battle is over, the Holy Master will reward those who have contributed greatly. At that time, it won't be difficult for you to be crowned as kings. Pan Hong's face was black, while Tai Shu Kong played the good cop. He comforted the martial artists of the Holy Dragon Sect. Indeed, Tai Shu Kong's words boosted the morale of the martial artists of the Holy Dragon Sect. After all, Qin Yu is an almighty who could kill Emperor God Tianyuan. It was rumored that he had a strong background. He might have a way to deal with this crisis. Buzz, buzz, buzz. As the Sacred Dragon Sect's experts worked, all kinds of spirit crystals and immortal stones appeared and merged into the ancient array. The Imperial City's barrier, which seemed to be on the verge of collapse, began to recover at an astonishing speed. What Pan Hong said was not empty words. In order to prevent the late-stage Ancient Emperor from invading and give the two of them time to teleport away, Qin Yu had set up the ancient immortal design. Once it was activated, even a late-stage Ancient Emperor would find it hard to destroy it. As for the middle-stage Ancient Emperors, even if they joined forces, they wouldn't be able to break the barrier in a short period of time. If there was an endless supply of energy, the restrictive barrier would become even more powerful. At this point, the four great divine empires had joined forces to besiege the Sacred Dragon Sect. They were in a stalemate with the Sacred Dragon Sect. The battle seemed to be very difficult to end in a short period of time. This situation had exceeded the expectations of the countless observing factions in the distance, causing them to be extremely envious. After all, the Holy Dragon Sect was merely a border martial arts force. It was impossible for them to have such a shocking foundation. The countless spirit crystals and immortal stones that were flowing into the barrier must have been plundered from the seven-star ancient kingdom and the Sky Yuan divine dynasty. Everyone, can you see what kind of divine design this is? How could it be so powerful? The ancient emperor, who wore a crown and a golden dragon robe, looked at the stalemate between the siege and the city. He couldn't hide the shock in his eyes. Even the Imperial City's core palace's barrier wasn't as powerful as this. However, the Sacred Dragon Sect had set up a barrier that spanned tens of thousands of miles around the Imperial City. It was impossible to accomplish such a feat without a heaven-defying array Dao attainment. It seems to be a divine design from the primordial era, the 9-palace origin protection array. The Thunderclap Emperor, who had a goatee and wore a Taoist robe, squinted his eyes as he recognized it. Within the Imperial City's boundary, there were 9 ancient arrays that shifted and intertwined with each other, scattering all the attacks. The 9-palace origin protection array was lost in the primordial era. Even if it was found, there aren't many people with such array Tao attainment in the 9 prefectures of the heaven domain. Those old fellows aren't to be trifled with. The sky battling emperor, who was holding a battle sword, raised his eyebrows slightly. It seemed like the sacred dragon sect's master was more powerful than they had imagined. Could he really be from the central continent? Those old fellows aren't to be trifled with, but we aren't pushovers either. Since they've already interfered with the power structure of the East continent, they're still trying to take us down one by one. Even if they're not to be trifled with, we can't pretend that we didn't see it. If this continues, the same fate as the 7-star ancient kingdom and the Sky Yuan divine dynasty will befall us. The Dragon Tiger Emperor said eerily. Ever since he suspected that Qin Yu, who had killed Emperor God Tian Yuan, was related to the Dragon God Emperor, the Dragon Tiger Emperor had become furious. The Dragon Tiger Emperor was burning with impatience to get rid of the sacred dragon sect. Hence, he sent people to disguise themselves as the sacred dragon sect's people to massacre the surrounding forces. He even sent people to gather information from the various forces and purposely left traces of the sacred dragon sect's people. Thus, the fake Holy Dragon sect was plotting against the East Continent's forces. It was precisely because of the Dragon Tiger Sovereign's actions that the Thunderclap Emperor and the other 2 decided to join forces to destroy the Sacred Dragon sect. Since that's the case, let's not just watch from the sidelines. Let's make a move. The Thunderclap Emperor took a step forward when he saw that the 4 factions were still unable to break through the Holy Dragon Gate's barrier after so long. Rumble. Immediately, an earth-shaking thunder exploded. At this moment, the entire sky was filled with rolling thunder, covering the sky and covering the sun. The martialists in the imperial city felt the sky suddenly darken as a terrifying pressure enveloped their hearts. This caused the members of the Sacred Dragon sect, who had regained their morale after seeing that they had blocked the alliance army of the 4 great factions, to panic once again. The moment a late-stage ancient emperor took action, the Sacred Dragon sect's aura was suppressed to rock bottom. Don't relax, defend. Even Pam Hong and Taishu Kong looked extremely solemn. The Thunderclap Emperor was a famous emperor realm almighty in the East Continent. Even among the late-stage ancient emperors, the Thunderclap Emperor's strength was considered top-notch. 8 Desolation Lightning Strike. Under the gazes of tens of thousands of people, the Thunderclap Emperor, who was standing under the lightning that filled the sky, suddenly pointed his finger. It was as if the sky had been torn apart. Amidst the rolling thunder, a ferocious and terrifying lightning beast suddenly swooped down. It was as fast as lightning and instantly bombarded the peak of the imperial city. Rumble. The entire imperial city shook violently at this moment as countless buildings in the city collapsed. The 9 paths, ancient formations in the barrier were under great pressure and showed signs of instability. Chapter 664. What a terrifying power! As expected of the Thunderclap Emperor, who is unrivaled among the senior emperors. It seems that even if the Sacred Dragon Sect Master appears, he will not be able to save the Sacred Dragon Sect. The Thunderclap Emperor's attack had caused the Sacred Dragon Sect's great protective array to tremble. This caused countless spectators in the distance to suck in a breath of cold air. The Thunderclap Emperor's cultivation was above Emperor God Tian Yuan's. All of a sudden, a surge of battle intent appeared. Following a blinding golden light, a 1,000-foot-long sword radiance tore through the void and slashed at the boundary of the Holy Dragon Sect's imperial city. Crack! Suddenly, a crisp cracking sound could be heard from the Sacred Dragon Sect's imperial city's boundary. The people of the Sacred Dragon Sect, who were burning spiritual crystals and divine stones to restore the power of the 9-palace origin protection array, turned pale. They turned their heads and saw a figure with soaring fighting spirit appear on their west side. In front of that person, a crack that was a few hundred feet wide appeared on the imperial city's boundary. That person was none other than the heaven-battling God Emperor. The Thunderclap Emperor's attack had caused the imperial city's boundary to be on the verge of collapse. Now that the heaven-battling god emperor had attacked with his invincible sword Tao of battle intent, the barrier was immediately broken. Roar! Roar! After the fighting heaven emperor's attack, a dragon roar and a tiger roar could be heard, shaking the heavens and earth. The image of an ancient evil dragon and an immemorial fierce tiger appeared behind the dragon tiger emperor. As the dragon tiger emperor threw out a punch, the evil dragon and fierce tiger intertwined with each other and punched out. Rumble. Under the continuous attacks of the three late ancient emperors, the imperial city's boundary was shattered. The imperial city's barrier completely exploded, turning into a violent and destructive attack wave that swept out and destroyed tens of thousands of lands. At that moment, the people of the Sacred Dragon sect were exposed to the combined forces of the four forces. The martial artists of the Sacred Dragon sect turned pale and broke out in cold sweat. They could not hide their fear. When they saw the power of the imperial city's boundary, they still had some hope. However, after the attacks of the three ancient emperors, the hope in their hearts was completely extinguished. Furthermore, even at this time, Qin Yu still hadn't appeared. This caused them to be unable to resist in the slightest. Peerless imperial might. Seeing the imperial city's enchantment shattered, the ancient emperor, who had already gathered his supreme royal might, didn't stop there. He immediately unleashed a destructive attack. He uttered a roar as a giant hand, made of Dominator Providence, descended from the sky. Under the fearful and despairing gazes of the Holy Dragon sect and the others, Shao Chun abruptly descended. Looking at the might of that palm strike, the people of the Holy Dragon sect would definitely die if they were hit. Even those in the middle stage of the Ancient Emperor realm would not be able to survive. Bang, 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 bang. However, just as the Holy Dragon sect was at the brink of destruction, the ground suddenly exploded. 8 beams of divine light shot into the sky and appeared around the Holy Dragon sect's imperial city. Rumble. The 8 divine lights were the 8 ancient altars. After the 8 altars appeared, an ancient barrier appeared. With a deafening explosion, the ancient emperor's descending palm of imperial providence was blocked by the barrier. This is Masters back. Pan Hong and Tai Shu Kong, who had grave expressions on their faces, were overjoyed when they saw this scene. At this moment, the only person who would help them was naturally Qin Yu. As expected, a figure emerged from the ground along with the 8 altars. He's finally appeared. The Dragon Tiger Emperor, Thunderclap Emperor, and the other 3 turned their heads and looked over. Killing intent filled the air. After being surrounded for so long, the main character had finally appeared. Seal. Qin Yu, who had appeared, formed a seal with his hands. His eyes were cold as he bellowed. The 8 ancient altars began to tremble as layers of barriers appeared in an instant. The 8 heavenly heaven array was formed. The Dragon Tiger Emperor and the others were completely enveloped. What's this fluctuation? This array can affect space. I'm afraid it's an extremely rare spatial divine array. Is this guy trying to kill us all in one fell swoop? They sensed that the 8 heavenly heaven array had trapped all of them. The Thunderclap Emperor, the Ancient Emperor, and the heaven-battling Divine Emperor were all sizing up Qin Yu with flickering gazes. Qin Yu's actions caused them to be unable to understand him. They had 4 late Ancient Emperors on their side. Qin Yu was simply courting death if he wanted to fight them alone. This feeling, impossible, absolutely impossible. His soul has been completely destroyed. It's impossible for him to still be alive in this world. However, among the 4 great ancient emperors, the Dragon Tiger Emperor, who had put forth all of his effort to organize this joint attack, upon seeing Qin Yu, his pupils abruptly shrunk. He was in disbelief. It wasn't the first time he had seen Qin Yu. When Emperor God Tian Yuan had been killed, he had looked at Qin Yu from afar. However, the current Qin Yu was completely different from the Qin Yu from back then. The aura that Qin Yu was exuding made the Dragon Tiger Emperor feel a sense of familiarity. It was as if he was facing the Dragon God Emperor in the past. There was a sense of danger that made his hair stand on end. That was why the Dragon Tiger Emperor was so shocked. Although he wanted to kill Qin Yu and Sacred Dragon Sect because of his suspicions, he didn't want his suspicions to come true. When he thought about how Qin Yu was the Dragon God Emperor, the Dragon Tiger Emperor lost half of his fighting spirit. Just as well, I don't have to look for you again. After the 8 heavenly heaven array was set up, Qin Yu looked at the 3 ancient emperors indifferently. He then looked at the Dragon Tiger Emperor. As for the other 3 ancient emperors, Qin Yu wasn't interested in them. However, he couldn't let the Dragon Tiger Emperor go. Qin Yu had a strong obsession with the 12 ancient emperors and Star Luo. The stronger the obsession, the stronger the motivation for Qin Yu to become stronger. Correspondingly, if the obsession was too strong and couldn't be resolved, it could give birth to a heart demon. Thus, compared to the Thunderclap Heavenly Emperor and the other 2 invaders, the Dragon Lake Emperor was Qin Yu's primary target. Master, Pam Hong and Taishu Kong immediately flew over when they saw Qin Yu. This is the 8 heavenly heaven arrays transformation Dao and killing array. Lead the experts of your sex and kill them all. Qin Yu moved his finger and sent 2 ancient tokens into Pam Hong and Taishu Kong's foreheads. With these 2 divine command plates, they would be able to move about freely in the 8-layer immortal heaven formation array and not fall into Qin Yu's traps. In fact, Qin Yu had already teleported back. The reason why he hadn't appeared was because he was setting up killing arrays in the 8 heavenly heaven array. After this battle, Qin Yu would leave the eastern continent. Therefore, the 4 invading forces had become the targets of the Sacred Dragon Sect. Since destroying the 7-star ancient kingdoms and the Tianyuan divine dynasty wasn't enough, they would use the forces of the 4 ancient emperors as a blood sacrifice. Let's see which force in the eastern continent would dare to covet the Sacred Dragon Sect in the future. Yes, Pam Hong and Taishu Kong flew back with killing intent. They gathered the experts of the Sacred Dragon Sect and flew into the 8 heavenly heaven array. Now it's your turn. Qin Yu stepped into the air and moved his right hand. A divine spear with chaotic dragon patterns appeared. It was the completed chaotic dragon spear. Chapter 665. He really wants to take on 4 of us. Seeing this, the Thunderclap martial monarch let out a cold grin as the lightning around him exploded. Regardless of where Qin Yu came from, he was simply courting death for daring to challenge 4 ancient emperors of the older generation by himself. Since he's tired of living, let's send him on his way. The heavenly battling god emperor's battle intent surged like a volcano. The stronger the battle intent, the more terrifying the aura of the heavenly battling god emperor became. All the martial artists within a radius of 10 million miles felt their hearts palpitate intensely. No wonder he could kill the heavenly origin emperor. The ancient emperor, who had gathered his sovereign Tao providence but was easily blocked, had a look of surprise in his eyes. Qin Yu's strength was far more terrifying than the aura he had displayed. The sovereign Tao providence that he had comprehended was the accumulation of thousands of years' worth of sovereign Tao providence. Even if he hadn't gone all out, how could it be so easily dealt with? Of course, in this sort of 4 versus 1 situation, even if Qin Yu had some ability, he did not believe that he would be able to create any waves. Dragon Tiger Emperor, what's wrong? The Thunderclap Emperor and the other 2 finally realized that there was something wrong with the silent Dragon Tiger Emperor, who was staring at Qin Yu with a grave expression. The Dragon Tiger Emperor had been the one behind the plan to destroy the Sacred Dragon Sect. The Dragon Tiger Emperor had always been enthusiastic about destroying the Sacred Dragon Sect. Why did he reveal such an expression when he saw the Sacred Dragon Sect's leader? It seemed like the Dragon Tiger Emperor wasn't just wary of the Sacred Dragon Sect's leader, he was even a little afraid of him. This person's cultivation is strong and can't be underestimated. Everyone go all out. The Dragon Tiger Emperor shuddered and regained his senses. He looked at the Thunderclap Emperor and the other 2 and calmed himself down. Although Qin Yu's aura was similar, he didn't have the overwhelming aura that the Dragon God Emperor had in the past. Even if he was the Dragon God Emperor in the past, he wouldn't have the heaven-defying cultivation that he had in the past. Now that it was 4 against 1, the Dragon God Sovereign felt a little more confident in his chances of winning. What? You know this person? The Thunderclap Emperor and the other two immediately noticed the anomaly of the Dragon Tiger Sovereign, and their expressions changed. Don't tell me that the Dragon Tiger Emperor is using us as a blade. Previously, when Emperor God Tian Yuan led Tian Yuan Shan Dynasty to suppress Sacred Dragon Sect, I passed by him. This person has shocking attainments in array doctrine. Even if a late-stage ancient emperor was trapped, it would be difficult for him to escape. On the other hand, he can advance and retreat as he pleases. So, it's best that we don't be careless. If he escapes today, I'm afraid we won't be able to eat or sleep in peace in the future. The Dragon Tiger Emperor's heart skipped a beat, but his expression remained the same. He was indeed prepared to attack the Sacred Dragon Sect because of his suspicions. If the Thunderclap Martial Monarch and the others were to betray him, it would serve as a deadly blow to him. In the Dragon Tiger Emperor's heart, he didn't have the slightest chance of winning against Qin. With the four of us working together, how could he possibly escape? Dragon Tiger Sovereign, you think too highly of him. The Heaven Battling God Emperor said indifferently, his battle intent soaring like a rainbow. Ancestor Devil Statue. At this moment, Qin Yu's thoughts moved. Billowing demonic chi surged, and the Ancestor Devil Statue appeared. Vast demonic might swept across the heavens and earth, frightening everyone. Now that the 8 heavens of the heavens have been deployed, the outside world couldn't see the scene within the heavens of the heavens. Even the Sacred Dragon Sect and the 4 great god dynasties could only vaguely see Qin Yu and the other 3. This was because they were in different heavens. Hence, Qin Yu could release the Ancestor Devil Statue without any scruples, and the Ancestor Devil Statue wouldn't be detected by others. After all, Qin Yu had used the Ancestor Devil Statue to attack Xing Luo outside the ancient demon clan's ancestral land. After Qin Yu's encounter with the sky-burying sword deity, he felt that it was better not to meet Xing Luo. He wanted to wait for his cultivation to recover to its peak before looking for Xing Luo and killing him in one fell swoop to prevent future troubles. Demonic Qi? Extraterritorial demon clan? No, this is the demonic Qi of the ancient demon clan. Could this person not be a cultivator of the heaven domain, but a member of the ancient demon clan? The Thunderclap Emperor, the Heaven Battling God Emperor, and the ancient Emperor of the Extreme Monarch Realm were all shocked by the appearance of the Devil Ancestor statue. The Ancestor Devil statue's aura was far stronger than Qin Yu's. Even the Thunderclap Emperor and the others, who were also late-stage ancient emperors, were wary of the Ancestor Devil statue. They didn't dare to be careless. No wonder, so he has helpers. However, the Dragon Tiger Emperor looked at the Ancestor Devil statue, and a light flashed in his eyes. Qin Yu was actually related to the ancient demon clan. This gave the Dragon Lake Emperor an excellent idea. The invasion of the extraterritorial devil race had just ended. If someone related to the extraterritorial devil race appeared now, it would definitely attract the attention of the entire 9 prefectures. Kill, while the Dragon Tiger Emperor and the other 3 were having different thoughts. With a chilly gaze, Qin Yu held the dragon spear in his hand. Turning into a ray of light, he charged toward the Dragon Tiger Emperor with lightning speed. The Ancestor Devil statue didn't hesitate either. Like an ancient demon awakening from its slumber, it charged towards the Thunderclap Heavenly Emperor and the others. It looked like it was going to fight the 3 of them alone. Dragon dominates the 9 heavens. Qin Yu, who was the first to attack, his entire body was surging with primal chaos dragon aura. His aura was soaring as he thrust out his spear. Dragon Tiger Divine Power. Sensing Qin Yu's killing intent locking onto him, the Dragon Tiger Emperor instantly came back to his senses, and mysterious Dragon Tiger Divine runes appeared on his fists. With a roar, the Dragon Tiger Emperor punched out with both fists. Countless fist lights shot through the sky like millions of meteors and completely covered Qin Yu. His figure couldn't be seen at all. Bang, bang, bang. In the next instant, endless explosions rang out. Whoosh! Like a dragon emerging from the sea, a figure rushed out of the destructive fist lights and charged towards the Dragon Tiger Emperor at an extremely fast speed. It was Qin. In an instant, he had shattered the Dragon Tiger Emperor's attack. Die! The Dragon Tiger Emperor's eyes flashed with ruthlessness as he turned around and charged forward. Dragon roars and tiger roars rang out continuously. Rumble! Qin Yu and the Dragon Tiger Emperor immediately started an intense battle that shook the heavens and earth. How dare you! After the ancestor devil statue charged out, it enveloped the Thunderclap Emperor and the others with its demonic aura. Seeing this, the Thunderclap Emperor was enraged. With a wave of his hand, a torrent of lightning rushed towards the primogenic demon statue, and a destructive Tao art raged. I hope the legendary ancient demon race won't disappoint me. The battle intent in the heaven battling god Emperor's eyes grew stronger and stronger. He flashed through the air and slashed out with the divine sword in his hand. The power of the sword light was so strong that even a late-stage ancient emperor would be shocked. Emperor's might suppresses the world. The ancient emperor glanced at Qin Yu and the Dragon Tiger Emperor, who were locked in battle. Then, he turned his attention to the ancestral devil statue and rushed out with a terrifying aura. Chapter 666. Although Qin Yu's cultivation was very strong, the threat that the ancestral devil statue posed to the three of them was much greater than Qin Yu. Since Qin Yu was being held back by the Dragon Tiger Emperor, the ancient emperor naturally had to seize the opportunity to work with the Thunderclap Emperor and the Heaven Battling God Emperor to destroy the ancestral devil statue. Once the ancestral devil statue was dead, it would be easy to deal with Qin Yu. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The ancestral devil statue wasn't suppressed in a 1 versus 3 battle. The seal on its 3 heads and 6 arms was removed, and its fists towered into the sky. Its eyes split the sky, and every punch and kick was filled with a vast demonic aura. Whether it was the Thunderclap Emperor's thunder, the Heaven Battling God Emperor's destructive sword light, or the ancient emperor's imperial providence, they were all shattered by the ancestral devil statue. The ancestral devil statue's attacks were bold and without much fighting technique, but they had the momentum to split the heavens and earth. The Thunderclap Emperor and the other 2 used their divine abilities and secret arts, but they couldn't do anything to the ancestral devil statue. As expected of the primordial devil race that almost unified the heaven domain, its battle strength is truly astonishing. The heaven battling god emperor laughed wildly, and his sword erupted with astonishing sword aura. Man and sword became one, and he turned into a ray of sword light that shot through the air like lightning. The sword was so fast that it reached the ancestral devil statue in the blink of an eye. Pucci! The ancestral devil statue immediately moved to the side, but it was still hit by the sword light, and its middle head was cut off. The sword light paused, and the heaven battling god emperor appeared with a smile. But in the next moment, the smile on his face froze, and his gaze froze. What's going on? Could it be that what was hit wasn't its true body? The ancestral devil statue's severed head turned into billowing demonic energy, and then returned to its body, where it became 3 heads and 6 arms again. The heaven battling god emperor's attack didn't seem to have done any damage to the ancestral devil statue. This person is extremely strange. Not only is his physical defense amazing, but he also seems to have an extraordinary healing ability. The Thunderclap Emperor narrowed his eyes, and his expression turned serious. In the previous exchange of blows, they had already seen through it. The fighting strength of the ancestor devil statue was far above the 3 of them. Even if it had not stepped into the great circle of the ancient emperor realm, its cultivation level was probably at the peak of the late ancient emperor realm. He might even have half a foot in the great circle of the ancient emperor realm. If they were to fight him alone, they would have no chance of winning. Now, even if the 3 of them joined forces, they could only fight against the ancestor devil statue. Even suppressing it was difficult. while Qin Yu and the ancestral demon statue were fighting the Dragon Tiger Sovereign, and the other three, the Dragon Tiger Sovereign and the demon ancestor demon statue, were also fighting the Dragon Tiger Sovereign's group. Pam Hong and Tai Shu Kong led the Sacred Dragon Sect's experts to kill the allied forces of the four superpowers. The Sacred Dragon Sect, which had originally been at an absolute disadvantage in terms of numbers, now had the absolute upper hand with the help of the 8 heavenly heaven-killing array laid down by Qin Yu. Under the ambush of the killing array that had appeared without any warning, the allied forces of the four great forces had long been scattered, falling into the various heavens. Pan Hong and Tai Su Kong had seized the opportunity to appear mysteriously in the 8th celestial heavens and continued their massacre. The allied forces of the four great forces were constantly being nibbled away by the Sacred Dragon Sect, and the number of casualties rose sharply. Rumble. Suddenly, an earth-shattering explosion sounded in the void, and the entire 8 heavenly heaven-killing array shook violently. The Thunderclap Emperor, Heaven-Battling Emperor, and Ancient Emperor Realm immediately sensed it, and their faces changed slightly as they quickly looked in the direction of the Dragon Tiger Sovereign. They saw that the Dragon Tiger Sovereign, who had been locked in battle with Qin Yu, had been sent flying while vomiting blood. He crashed heavily into the boundary of the heavenly heaven-killing array, and his face quickly turned pale. "It's really... cough cough. It's you." The Dragon Tiger Sovereign coughed violently, and blood kept coming out his mouth. There was a bowl-sized bloody hole on the left side of his chest, and Emperor blood gushed out unstoppably. However, the Dragon Tiger Sovereign did not care about his injuries. His eyes narrowed as he looked at Qin Yu in disbelief. In that instant, Qin Yu's cultivation had suddenly skyrocketed, and his fighting strength had reached a level where he could suppress the Dragon Tiger Sovereign in an instant. He had injured the Dragon Tiger Sovereign with a single spear strike. It was also at that moment that the Dragon Tiger Sovereign realized that Qin Yu was the Dragon Tiger Sovereign of the past. That was because the Dragon Tiger Sovereign had personally experienced the 9 esoteric battle dragon in Qin Yu's body, and he could not be wrong. The Eastern Continent's 7-star Ancient Emperor and Emperor God Tian Yuan are already on their way. Now, it's your turn. Qin Yu, whose body was surrounded by chaotic dragon chi, had ancient and mysterious green dragon scales growing all over his body. It was the green dragon battle heaven. When Qin Yu was an early ancient emperor, he could use the green dragon battle heaven to fight against a late ancient emperor. Now that his cultivation had reached the middle ancient emperor realm, he could use the green dragon battle heaven to kill a late ancient emperor. If not for the Thunderclap Emperor and the other two, Qin Yu would not have needed to set up the 8 heavenly heaven-killing array. How can you still be alive? You should be dead by now, right? It's impossible for you to still be alive. How'd you do it? The Dragon Tiger Sovereign roared, and his aura became more chaotic. There was a destructive force in his body that was crazily running around, and the Dragon Tiger Sovereign had to suppress it. I also want to know the answer to this question, but it seems like you won't be able to give me an answer. Qin Yu was too lazy to destroy. He moved his right hand and pointed the chaotic dragon spear at the Dragon Tiger Sovereign. Terrifying, chaotic energy gathered at the tip of the spear, and it emitted a monstrous fluctuation. You're lucky to be able to die under a pseudo-immortal weapon. Qin Yu had already become one with his spear, and he turned into a ray of light that flashed through the void. Dragon Tiger Divine Shield. The Dragon Tiger Sovereign's hair stood on end, and a strong sense of impending doom rose in his heart. He couldn't care less about suppressing the destructive force in his body. He immediately formed a seal with both hands and executed the Dragon Tiger Divine Sect's strongest forbidden technique. After the roars of the dragon and tiger resounded, an evil dragon and a fierce tiger turned into a Dragon Tiger Divine Barrier that surrounded the Dragon Tiger Sovereign, leaving no gaps. The first Dragon Tiger Emperor had obtained this forbidden divine ability from an ancient immortal ruin. It was rumored to be an immortal divine ability that was later transformed into the Dragon Tiger Divine Sect's most powerful technique. Only the divine masters of each generation could cultivate it. It was said that no one in the ancient emperor realm could break this forbidden technique once it was fully comprehended. Crack! But in the next moment, a ray of chaotic light flashed, and an extremely crisp cracking sound rang out. A fist-sized spear muzzle appeared on the Dragon Tiger Divine Shield, and the muzzle happened to appear between the Dragon Tiger Sovereign's eyebrows. Naturally, a bloody muzzle appeared between the Dragon Tiger Sovereign's eyebrows as well. The spear had pierced through his head. The Dragon Tiger Sovereign's body stiffened in the void, and his eyes were still filled with fear. His life was quickly fading away. Qin Yu appeared behind the Dragon Tiger Sovereign with a chaotic dragon spear in his hand. The Dragon Tiger Sovereign had died under a single spear strike. At this point, all of Qin Yu's former enemies in the East Continent had been killed. Chapter 667. The Dragon Tiger Emperor is dead. How can this be? How can his Dragon Tiger Divine Shield possibly be broken so easily? Could that chaotic spear be an immortal weapon? Seeing the Dragon Tiger Emperor defeated and killed in an instant, Jing Lei Dadi, the heaven-battling God Emperor, and the ancient emperor's faces changed drastically. Although the Dragon Tiger Emperor Venerable's cultivation wasn't the strongest among the four of them, he was already a late-stage ancient emperor. Even if they were at the same cultivation level, they wouldn't be able to kill him so easily. They had thought that the ancestor demon statue was the biggest threat, but now it seemed like they were wrong. Qin Yu was the one who truly posed a fatal danger to them. After all, although they couldn't do anything to the ancestor demon statue, the ancestor demon statue couldn't defeat them either. It wasn't like Qin Yu, who had killed the Dragon Tiger Emperor so easily. This matter originally had nothing to do with you, so why did you have to get involved? Now, I can only send you on your way. He threw the Dragon Tiger Emperor's soul into the Divine Dragon Ancient Seal for the Skeleton Ghost King to refine. Qin Yu's cold and indifferent eyes looked at the Thunderclap Emperor and the other two. Since they had decided to invade the Sacred Dragon sect, Qin Yu wouldn't let them go. More importantly, they had seen the battle between him and the Dragon Tiger Emperor. It was also precisely because he had the thought of catching them all in one fell swoop that Qin Yu had set up the 8 Great Divine Heaven Array in the dark and used it to trap the shocking Thunder Emperor and his brothers. Who exactly are you? Hearing what Qin Yu said, the Thunderclap Emperor naturally understood that there was a personal grudge between Qin Yu and the Dragon Tiger Emperor. They were merely being used by the Dragon Tiger Emperor. However, to the Dragon Tiger Emperor's surprise, he was able to faintly sense a somewhat familiar aura from the current Qin Yu. It was as if he had seen Qin Yu somewhere before. Why ask so many questions when you are about to die? After Qin Yu said those words indifferently, he immediately charged forward. All of them were late-stage ancient emperors. Who knew if they had any means to leak this news out? Right now, Qin Yu did not want to reveal his identity as the Dragon God Sovereign. Boom! Following Qin Yu's attack, the ancestral devil statue immediately pounced forward, its demonic might surging and shaking the heavens, as if it wanted to shatter this part of the world. Qin Yu, who had become one with his spear, pierced through the air, although his might was far inferior to that of the ancestral devil statue. However, in the eyes of the Thunderclap Emperor and the others, Qin Yu's threat was far above the devil ancestor statues. Just now, the Dragon Tiger Emperor had died to Qin Yu's move. Ancient Emperor Huangji, the heaven-battling God Emperor, and I will hold them back. You are more proficient in array, Dao than the two of us, so find a way to break this level of array formation as soon as possible. These two people are not easy to deal with. If we can't break the barrier, the three of us might die here today. Mysterious lightning symbols flickered in the Thunderclap Emperor's eyes as lightning crackled around him, exuding a boundless aura that made one's heart tremble. The heaven-battling God Emperor roared as an ancient sword mark appeared on his forehead. After the sword mark was unsealed, a torrential sword might swept through the sky. Vaguely, an ancient illusory sword shadow several thousand feet long appeared behind the heaven-battling God Emperor. The divine sword in the heaven-battling god emperor's hand trembled as the illusory sword shadow merged into the sword in his hand, causing the sword to exude a destructive might. Clearly, the Thunderclap Emperor and the heaven-battling god emperor were going all out, ready to fight to the death. Seeing this, the ancient Emperor Huangji's expression turned incomparably solemn as he quickly flew toward one of the 8 ancient altars. Although he had yet to figure out the structure of the 8 heavenly gods formation. However, there was no doubt that the 8 ancient altars were an important fulcrum that formed the 8 heavenly gods formation, just like the heart of an ordinary formation. As long as the 8 ancient altars were destroyed, the 8 heavenly gods formation would collapse. Qin Yu glanced at the ancient Emperor Huangji and ignored him, continuing to attack the heaven-battling god emperor with his spear. Even if one knew the way to break the 8 heavenly gods formation, one could only break it from the outside. It was impossible to break it from the inside. One had to know that each layer of the 8 heavenly gods formation was equivalent to a layer of heaven and earth. The 8 altars seemed to be right in front of them, but the spatial Tao within the formation was so strong that even a late-stage ancient emperor couldn't cross it. He's not stopping us. Seeing that Qin Yu had no intention of stopping the ancient Emperor Huangji, the Thunderclap Emperor and the heaven-battling god emperor's hearts sank as a strong sense of unease rose within them. Qin Yu's attitude showed that he was confident that the ancient Emperor Huangji couldn't break the formation. If that was the case, they would be in real danger. Dragon dominates the 9 heavens. However, the Thunderclap Emperor and the heaven-battling god emperor didn't have the time to think about it. At this moment, Qin Yu, who was one with his spear, had already charged forward. His target was the heaven-battling god emperor. Although the primal chaos dragon spear wasn't a true immortal weapon, it was already a quasi-immortal weapon. Compared to the ancient emperor weapons of the 9 prefectures, it was much stronger. The heaven-battling god emperor, who was locked on, felt his heart pounding. He didn't dare to be careless as he prepared for battle. As for the Thunderclap Emperor, he was completely suppressed by the primogeniture devil statue. A destructive battle broke out once again. Within the divine tier heaven boundary, everything became violent and destructive, and the void shook violently. Destroy! After a few breaths of time, the green dragon scales on Qin Yu's body shone brightly. The primal chaos dragon spear let out a deafening dragon roar. The primal chaos dragon spear seemed to have turned into a primal chaos ancestor dragon as it tore through the golden sword light. Pucci! In the next instant, the Tao technique collapsed and his flesh was pierced. The heaven-battling god emperor was pierced through by Qin Yu's spear. His soul scattered as he died. Rumble! Almost at the same time, in the sea of lightning that covered the sky, a terrifying demonic shadow flashed and broke through the sky, followed by a deafening explosion. Not long after, the rolling divine lightning dissipated and the primogeniture devil statue and the Thunderclap Emperor appeared. However, the Thunderclap Emperor's head had already been separated from his body by the primogeniture devil statue. With the Thunderclap Emperor and the heaven-battling god Emperor dead, the only remaining ancient emperor left was the ancient emperor, who was still trying to break through the ancient altar. With a thought, Qin Yu brought the progenitor devil statue and chased after the ancient emperor as if teleporting. 2 against 1, the battle went as expected. The ancient emperor was dead. At this point, the 4 older generation ancient emperors of the eastern continent were all dead. After Qin Yu sent the primogenitor devil statue to suppress the invaders of the 4 major powers, he dispersed the 8 heavenly gods formation. When they saw the sacred dragon sect and the others appear safely, the Thunderclap Emperor and the other 3 ancient emperors disappeared without a trace. The countless forces watching from afar were dead silent. There wasn't a single sound. Then, less than half a day after the battle ended, the news swept across the heaven region like a tornado. The 9 prefectures were shaken. Chapter 668. Sacred Dragon Sect. This battle had caused the name of Sacred Dragon Sect to spread across the 9 prefectures once again. Even the extraterritorial demon race and other forces had heard of it. Ever since the 7-star ancient emperor had died and the 7-star ancient kingdom had been destroyed, countless eyes in the 9 prefectures had gathered on Sacred Dragon Sect. After all, the fall of a late-stage ancient emperor was a huge matter to the 9 continents of the Heaven Domain. Later on, when an almighty in the 9 prefectures deduced that the 7-star ancient emperor had died in the extraterritorial demon race's invasion, many forces calmed down. However, Emperor God Tianyuan had led the Tianyuan divine dynasty to attack Sacred Dragon Sect. Emperor God Tianyuan had been killed. This had caused Sacred Dragon Sect to become the focus of the 9 prefectures once again. Countless forces were secretly investigating. However, no matter if it was the 7-star ancient kingdom or the Tianyuan divine dynasty, they could not be compared to this. The shocking Thunder Emperor, the Heaven Battling Emperor, the extreme Royal Ancient Emperor, and the Dragon Tiger Emperor had joined forces. Originally, countless forces in the East Continent had thought that Sacred Dragon Sect would be destroyed. However, the result was unexpected. The forces of the 4 ancient emperors had been completely annihilated. The result of this battle had caused the forces in the East Continent to fall into silence. Whether it was those who had secretly coveted Sacred Dragon Sect, or those who had wanted to take advantage of this battle, they had all disappeared without a trace. It was as if the death of the 4 ancient emperors had never happened. Even the territories of the shocking Thunder Emperor and the other 3 ancient emperors had not been invaded. In this battle, Qin Yu had pushed Sacred Dragon Sect's deterrence to the limit in the East Continent. Even the forces with late ancient emperors had taken the initiative to express their goodwill to Sacred Dragon Sect. After all, killing 4 ancient emperors in one battle was an unprecedented achievement in the history of the 9 prefectures. At this time, no force would be foolish enough to provoke Sacred Dragon Sect. After killing the 4 ancient emperors, the East Continent was no longer significant to Qin Yu. Hence, Qin Yu did not allow Sacred Dragon Sect to occupy the territories of the 4 ancient emperors. To the Sacred Dragon Sect, the resources of the 7-star ancient kingdom and the Tianyuan divine dynasty were more than enough for them to develop. After the battle ended, Qin Yu tossed the flesh and blood of all the martial artists from the 4 factions to the Skeleton Ghost King so that the Skeleton Ghost King could increase its cultivation as much as possible. After that, Qin Yu prepared to go to the Eternal Sword Mound. As for Pam Hong and Tai Shu Kong, they were sent to the southern continent by Qin Yu. Among the 12 ancient emperors, there were only the 2 ancient emperors from the south region and 1 ancient emperor from the north region, besides the 3 ancient emperors from the middle region. Qin Yu had no plans to deal with Central Prefecture's Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor, North Deity Luan, and 4 Symbols Tao Emperor. After this trip to the 1,000 Ghosts Sword Tomb ended, Qin Yu would take the opportunity to eliminate the North Continent's Great Sun Heavenly Monarch. After that, he would deal with the South Continent's god, Monarch Xian Yu, and Emperor Monarch Di Yan. Finally, it was the 3 emperors of the Central Continent and the Star Luo Empire. While Qin Yu was preparing to enter the Eternal Sword Mound, some factions in the Central Continent had their eyes on Qin Yu and the Sacred Dragon Sect. Central Continent, Ghost Emperor Sacred Island. Ghost Emperor, a wisp of ghostly chi entered the Skeleton Palace and turned into a man in black. How is it? Have you found Long Hao's whereabouts? The Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor, who had used some secret technique to recover his aura, opened his eyes. Vast power covered the sky and the earth, causing the void to tremble. The ghost curse imprint on Long Hao's body has completely disappeared. I have not found his whereabouts. However, I have found something else when I was investigating Long Hao. The black-clothed man replied respectfully. Speak. The Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor said sternly. Ghost Emperor, have you heard of the Sacred Dragon Sect in the Central Continent? The man in black asked. Of course, I have heard of them. They killed 4 ancient emperors in one battle. I wonder who is behind the Sacred Dragon Sect. The Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor nodded slightly. His eyes were filled with shock. Even with the Ghost Emperor's Sacred Island's strong foundation, It was impossible for them to kill 4 ancient emperors in one battle. Which of the older generation ancient emperors wasn't a wily old fox? All of them had life-saving methods on them. The Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor was confident that he could kill an ancient emperor of the same level in a one-on-one battle. However, it would not be easy to kill all 4 of them. I have found out that the previous sect leader of the Sacred Dragon sect was Senior Brother Long Hao. He was the eldest disciple of the Dragon God Emperor, Pan Hong. The black-clothed man's words were shocking. The disciple of the Dragon God Emperor? The Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor was shocked. Although Pan Hong has changed his appearance and surname, I am sure that the one beside Pan Hong is the second disciple of the Dragon God Emperor, Taishu Kong. The man in black replied, "Could it be that the current sect leader of the Sacred Dragon sect is the Dragon God Emperor? No, this is impossible." The Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor's eyes were filled with shock. The Dragon God Emperor, Qin Yu, had been completely destroyed thousands of years ago. There was no way he could have survived. However, to kill 4 ancient emperors in one battle, such heaven-defying means the Dragon God Emperor's figure lingered in the Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor's mind. The sect leader of the Sacred Dragon sect has a mysterious origin. He appeared out of nowhere, and there was no trace of him. However, Pan Hong and Taishu Kong were not the strongest in the Sacred Dragon sect, but they were the people in charge of the Sacred Dragon sect. Even the mid-stage ancient emperors had to listen to them. I think that even if that person is not the Dragon God Emperor, he must have a close relationship with the Dragon God Emperor. Otherwise, he would not have taken care of Pan Hong and Taishu Kong. More importantly, the deaths of the East Continent's 3 emperors who ambushed the Dragon God Emperor were directly or indirectly related to him. The man in black replied, "Could it really be him? If that is the case, doesn't it mean that the killing array that I set up back then was not able to kill him?" The Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor muttered to himself. His expression was uncertain. Where is the Mad Dragon God Emperor? After pondering for a long time, the Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor asked, "In the entire 9 prefectures of the Heaven Domain, only Xing Luo cared more about Qin Yu's survival than the Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor. Moreover, to deal with Qin Yu, the Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor needed Xing Luo's help. This subordinate has already sent someone to inform Emperor Kuang-Long, but as usual, Emperor Kuang-Long is completely untraceable. Although a secret message has been sent through a secret technique, there has been no reply. We can't contact him, and we don't know where he went." The man in black had participated in the Battle of the Immortal God Graveyard and was a confidant of the Ghost Emperor Holy Island. He knew that the Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor would inform Xing Luo, so he had already made arrangements. What the hell is that guy doing? The Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor's eyes darkened. How could he disappear at such a crucial time? Send a message to the North Emperor and the 4 symbols Tao Emperor immediately. Send someone to keep an eye on the Sacred Dragon sect. I want to know the whereabouts of the Sacred Dragon sect leader. Since Xing Luo could not be found, the Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor could only look for someone else. Whether the Sacred Dragon sect leader was the Dragon God Emperor or not, the Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor had to make the first move. If the Dragon God Emperor was the Dragon God Emperor, his cultivation must have not recovered to its peak. This was the best opportunity to strike. Yes. Under the Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor's arrangement, the hidden experts of the Ghost Emperor Holy Island moved out and disappeared. Chapter 669, Heaven Region Divine Land. A secret message from Ghost Emperor Zhun Tian. On a patch of dark clouds, a figure was looking into the distance as if he was searching for something. His expression changed slightly. This person was Xing Luo, who had disappeared from the central continent. Xing Luo waved his right hand, and an ancient jade talisman appeared. As his Tao power surged into the talisman, a message appeared. "Qin Yu, is he really still alive?" Xing Luo's eyes flashed when he saw the news. A strange look appeared in his eyes. He had suspected that Qin Yu was still alive when the extraterritorial demon race invaded the ancient demon race's ancestral land. Now that he read the message from Ghost Emperor Jintian, he was certain that Qin Yu had used some unknown method to survive. I thought I had no chance of obtaining the primordial combat dragon art. I didn't expect the heavens to help me. After a while, a strange smile appeared on Xing Luo's face. After learning the secret of the primordial combat dragon art, he had joined forces with Ghost Emperor Jintian and the others to ambush Qin Yu in the graveyard of immortal gods. His goal was to obtain the primordial combat dragon art from Qin Yu. However, he had underestimated Qin Yu. Although Qin Yu hadn't escaped, he hadn't captured him either. The primordial combat dragon art had disappeared when Qin Yu's body and soul self-destructed. Now that Qin Yu had returned alive, Xing Luo was naturally happy. Whoosh! At this moment, a black light shot over from the distance and appeared in front of Xing Luo. It was a black crow, and its eyes were suffused with a strange green light. When Xing Luo and the black crow looked at each other, two figures appeared in the crow's green eyes. If Qin Yu and Sky, Burier, Sword Immortal were here, they would definitely recognize the two figures. They were the Jiang siblings who had returned from reincarnation. You had quite far away. Xing Luo waved his hand, and the black crow flew into his sleeve. After that, Xing Luo's figure flashed, and he swiftly tore through space and flew towards a certain direction. Even with Xing Luo's cultivation base, he still flew for over 2 hours before arriving in front of a towering mountain peak that extended all the way into the clouds. The mountainside was shrouded in clouds and mist, making it impossible to see the situation inside. Someone's here? Within the stone hall at the peak of the mountain, Jiang Yuanyi and Jiang Qingyu, who had arranged the Spirit King's corpse into the three talents formation, opened their eyes at the same time. They felt an extremely aggressive aura approaching. Clearly, someone with bad intentions was approaching. Immediately, Jiang Yuanyi moved his right hand and put away the Spirit King's corpse. He didn't continue to inherit the Spirit King's mantle. Rumble. Almost at the same time, a terrifying might smashed into the mountain peak like a tornado. The barrier around the mountain exploded with a loud bang. The entire mountain collapsed as a result, causing a heaven-shaking commotion. Swoosh! 2 rays of light flashed from the collapsed mountain and stood in the air. They were none other than Jiang Yuanyi and Jiang Qingyu, whose faces were cold and murderous. Without saying a word, he attacked them directly. He wanted to kill them. He is Wild Dragon Sovereign? Seeing Xing Luo, who was surrounded by a terrifying Dao power, the Jiang clan siblings actually recognized him. They had seen Xing Luo in the forbidden land of the extraterritorial devil clan, but they didn't meet face to face. The Jiang clan siblings didn't know why Xing Luo would suddenly attack them. While they were sizing up Xing Luo, they also spread out their senses. When they didn't discover the crown prince, who was with Xing Luo that day, they sighed in relief. If Xing Luo was alone, they wouldn't be afraid. I'm sorry to disturb your cultivation. I have a matter that I need your help with. Xing Luo stepped into the air as the aura contained within his body became more and more terrifying. From your attitude, it doesn't seem like you're asking for help. Instead, it seems like you have a grudge against us. A 7-colored light condensed in Jiang Qingyu's eyes. Vaguely, the strange ancient seal condensed between her eyebrows also surfaced with a 7-colored light. A vast and overflowing pressure was emitted, suppressing one's soul. My method is a little presumptuous. I hope the two of you can forgive me. When she was about 300 meters away, Xing Luo stopped in midair. Behind him, the shadow of an ancient dragon appeared, making Xing Luo's aura even more terrifying. If you have something to say, say it. Jiang Yuanyi's skin glowed with treasure light. Each of the glows contained a terrifying force of Tao, as if the force of the heavens and earth had been transferred to the cultivator. Can you give me your Immortal King tokens? Xing Luo asked. Immortal King tokens? Jiang Yuanyi and Jiang Xingyu's expressions changed slightly. They didn't expect someone to come knocking on their door so soon after the Immortal King tokens were unsealed. It seemed like the rumor that the Immortal King tokens contained immortal affinity was true. I don't know what the Immortal King tokens are. I'm afraid you found the wrong person. Jiang Yuanyi said. Is that so? Then I have no choice. Before he finished speaking, a dragon's roar reverberated through the 9 heavens. Xing Luo merged with the ancient dragon shadow behind him and rushed out with a mighty aura. Indestructible deity technique. Jiang Yuanyi shouted. His skin glowed with treasure light, transforming into ancient immortal inscriptions that covered his body as he rushed forward. Rumble. Jiang Yuanyi was born with the indestructible deity body, and his physical body contained invincible might. At this moment, he wasn't suppressed by Xing Luo, who carried the ancient dragon's might. The two of them were locked in a fierce battle in the void. Terrifying Dao techniques turned into destructive storms that swept across the void. Primordial chaos, Saint's soul. Jiang Qingyu didn't join the battle. She just stood in the void behind, forming seals with her hands. A terrifying aura condensed around her body. She had the immortal primordial chaos, Saint soul, and her talent in the soul Dao was unparalleled. Naturally, she wouldn't engage in close combat. Saint's soul killer seal. Suddenly, Jiang Qingyu pointed out successively. Numerous ancient and profound seals tore through the sky from the tip of her finger, and they concealed themselves in space without leaving a trace behind. Rumble. Xing Luo, who was fighting with Jiang Yuanyi, seemed to have sensed something and immediately dodged to the side. In the next instant, the void where Xing Luo was a soul Dao storm that could destroy everything erupted, destroying everything in its path. God King Fist. Jiang Yuanyi seized the opportunity to predict Xing Luo's dodging position. His fists contained invincible might, and he punched out repeatedly. The sky shook, and the void trembled. Shenron flying heavens. Xing Luo roared, and a dragon's roar exploded. Vaguely, one could see a giant dragon tail sweeping across the void. Their attacks collided fiercely in the void, and earth-shattering destructive Dao techniques turned the area into a forbidden zone. Jiang Yuanyi's figure flashed, and he rushed out from the destructive zone, side by side with Jiang Qingyu. Xing Luo, who had cultivated the indestructible heavenly profound physique, stood in the destructive zone, allowing the destructive Dao techniques to land on his body. This scene made Jiang Yuanyi and Jiang Qingyu's expressions turn serious. Xing Luo's physical body was stronger than Jiang Yuanyi's, who had the indestructible deity body. Chapter 670. I don't have time to play around with you. Xing Luo seemed to be talking to himself. As soon as he finished speaking, he clenched his right hand into a fist. An incomparably terrifying shockwave swept across the area, directly dispersing the Dao of destruction around him. At this moment, a black light flashed in Xing Luo's eyes. One could vaguely see a figure in the depths of Xing Luo's eyes. What a terrifying aura! Could it be that his cultivation has already reached the peak of the ancient emperor realm? Jiang Yuanyi and Jiang Qingyu felt a chill run down their spines when they sensed Xing Luo's aura. The current Xing Luo was several times scarier than he was before. His aura seemed to have reached the peak of the ancient emperor realm. In fact, he might have even surpassed the limits of the ancient emperor realm. Purple dawn divine light. Xing Luo suddenly attacked. A dazzling purple light flashed in his eyes. Instantly, a dazzling purple light bloomed behind Xing Luo. It pierced through the void and destroyed everything. Not good. Jiang Yuanyi and Jiang Qingyu's expressions changed drastically when they saw the purple light. From the purple divine light, they could sense a hair-raising sense of danger. Immediately, the two of them unleashed their super-powerful innate divine abilities in an attempt to resist the purple divine light. Pucci. However, Jiang Yuanyi and Jiang Qingyu's abilities were instantly sealed and lost their effects the moment they came into contact with the purple light. The violent and destructive attacks landed on their bodies, causing them to vomit blood and fly backward. Their auras were weakened. This isn't a Tao of the sky domain. Could it be that he really surpassed the 9th stage of the martial path and stepped into the heavenly Tao? Jiang Yuanyi and Jiang Qingyu quickly retreated away from the purple divine light area. They hurried to suppress their internal injuries and looked at Star Luo with uncertainty. The purple divine light surrounding Star Luo was definitely not the power of the heaven domain's Tao. Although it was only for an instant, the aura that Xing Luo released was extremely similar to the Rakshasa Crown Prince's. Seal. Xing Luo's attack didn't stop there. He opened his right hand and aimed it at Jiang Yuanyi and Jiang Qingyu. In an instant, numerous strands of violet divine light condensed into appearance out of thin air above the 9 heavens, and they transformed into a violet-colored cage that smashed down forcefully. Go! Jiang Yuanyi was very decisive. Seeing this, he immediately threw out the Tremor Immortal King token and fled in the opposite direction with Jiang Qingyu. When Jiang Yuanyi threw out the Immortal King token, Xing Luo frowned. He had originally thought that the Jiang siblings had gathered the remaining 7 Immortal King tokens and triggered the spirit world within the Immortal King tokens. But from the looks of it now, that didn't seem to be the case. This was because after Jiang Yuanyi threw out the Tremor Immortal King token, Xing Luo no longer sensed the ripples of an Immortal King token from them. Is there someone else who triggered the restrictions on the Immortal King token? After Xing Luo dissipated the purple cage light, he held the Immortal King token in his hand and muttered to himself. If that was the case, he would have to put in more effort to sense the person who had triggered the Immortal King token. 2 months later, in the Holy Dragon Sect's imperial city of the East Continent, Qin Yu, who had quelled the chaos of the ancient emperor in the East Continent, left the Sacred Dragon Sect for the Divine Prefecture. After leaving the East Continent, Qin Yu met up with the Sky Burier, Sword Immortal, who had arrived as promised. After a few days, Qin Yu and the Sky Burier Sword Immortal arrived at the most mysterious Divine Prefecture in the 9 provinces of the Heaven Domain. Although the Divine Prefecture belonged to the Heaven Domain, there wasn't a single force that could take root and develop in the Divine Prefecture. This was because the Divine Prefecture was the world of the descendants of the gods. Although the ancient gods had disappeared in the long river of history, the various godly auras that they had left behind were not to be underestimated even for the ancient emperor. Previously, the extraterritorial devil tribe had drawn out the ancient godly power and used it to invade the Heaven Domain, causing countless experts to lose their lives. However, the descendants of the gods had benefited greatly from the ancient godly power, and their strength had increased exponentially. Of course, although the Divine Prefecture was the world of the descendants of the gods, there were still many experts from the Heaven Domain who entered and left the Divine Prefecture. There were too many ancient ruins in the Divine Prefecture. Not only were there ruins of the ancient gods, but there were also many archaic immortal ruins, which attracted countless experts to gather and explore. Qin Yu and the Sky Burier Sword Immortal had both been to the Divine Prefecture before. Therefore, the two of them easily arrived at one of the forbidden areas of the Divine Prefecture, the Eternal Sword Mound. The Eternal Sword Mound was located in the eastern part of the Divine Prefecture, in the center of an ancient barren mountain. From afar, the Eternal Sword Mound looked like a huge valley floating in the air. However, when one looked closer, one would realize that the Eternal Sword Mound that looked like a valley was actually formed by billions of sharp swords. However, those billions of sharp swords weren't real. They were just sword shadows that seemed to have solidified. A terrifying sword intent that could suppress both ancient and modern times emanated from the Eternal Sword Mound. Let's go. Qin Yu and the Sky Burier Sword Immortal didn't hesitate. In a flash, they flew toward the Eternal Sword Mound. At their level, the terrifying sword intent emanating from the Eternal Sword Mound had no effect on the two of them at all. The moment they entered the Eternal Sword Mound, Qin Yu and the Sky Burier Sword Immortal felt that the void around them was rippling like water. That feeling was as if they were entering a brand new world and losing contact with the outside world. Qin Yu and the Sky Burier Sword Immortal weren't very surprised by this. In the Eternal Sword Mound, every sword shadow that contained sword intent contained an independent space. In other words, this eternal sword mound with billions of sharp swords was equivalent to countless independent spaces stacked together. It was still fine if they were in the outer area. However, if they entered the depths of the eternal sword mound, even if they met face to face, they might be separated by several layers of space. Follow me. After crossing the outer area of the eternal sword mound, the Sky Burier Sword Immortal led the way. Although Qin Yu had explored the eternal sword mound before, he didn't explore it as deeply as the Sky Burier Sword Immortal. His understanding of the eternal sword mound was naturally inferior to the Sky Burier Sword Immortal. When Qin Yu and the Sky Burier Sword Immortal entered the eternal sword mound, several mysterious figures also quietly arrived at the eternal sword mound. No one knew what kind of secret technique they used, but they actually followed the path that Qin Yu and the Sky Burier Sword Immortal took. In the depths of the eternal sword mound, under the Sky Burier Sword Immortal's lead, Qin Yu came to a sword lake that flickered with light. In that sword lake, one could vaguely see the existence of an ancient door of light. That door of light was illusory, as if it existed, but also as if it didn't. It was quite mysterious. After passing through this sword lake, we will enter the true core of the eternal sword mound. The Sky Burier Sword Immortal unsheathed the ancient sword on his back, and an extremely terrifying sword intent surrounded him. Seeing that the Sky Burier Sword Immortal was so cautious, green dragon patterns appeared on Qin Yu's skin and flesh, and there were faint signs of them turning into dragon scales. He was using the green dragon battle the heavens. At the same time, the Chaos Ancestor Dragon and Ancestor Demon statue in Qin Yu's body were also restless, ready to deal with any danger that might appear at any time. Chapter 671. Swoosh. In the next moment, Sky Burier Sword Saint and Qin Yu turned into two rays of light and rushed into the sword lake. The sword lake looked like it was only 100 feet wide from the outside, but the moment they entered, they seemed to have traveled through time and space and arrived at a vast starry sky. The starry sky seemed to be boundless, and there were terrifying sword lights flashing in the void like shooting stars. They appeared without warning and disappeared without a trace. In the center of the starry sky, there was an extremely ancient light gate that was 10,000 feet wide. The light gate was no longer illusory, but was floating in the air. Qin Yu and Sky Burier Sword Saint flew to the light gate, and their expressions turned serious. A towering figure holding an ancient sword appeared in the light gate, and it was like a mountain. The towering figure emitted an extremely terrifying sword Tao pressure that suppressed the world. The reason why Qin Yu and Sky Burier Sword Saint looked so serious was because of the pressure emitted by the towering figure. It's actually become so big. Sky Burier Sword Saint looked at the figure carefully, and there was a hint of surprise in his eyes. "Is this the spirit of the sword tomb?" Qin Yu asked. The towering figure did not have any aura of life or soul Tao fluctuations. It was not a living thing. The only possibility was that it was the spirit of the sword tomb that Sky Burier Sword Saint had mentioned. To be precise, this is the projection of the spirit of the sword tomb. When I came here, it was only 100 feet wide, but now it is more than 10,000 feet wide. Sky Burier Sword Saint took a deep breath and flew toward the top of the ancient light gate with Qin Yu. Over there was an ancient sword light seal that contained quite a bit of power. Buzz, buzz. However, Sky Burier Sword Saint and Qin Yu's actions seemed to have triggered some kind of restriction. The countless sword shadows that flashed in the void were like demonic beasts that had gone berserk. With extremely terrifying power, they rushed towards Sky Burier Sword Saint and Qin Yu. There were so many of them that they formed a sword tide. Slash! Sky Swallowing Dragon Seal. Sky Burier Sword Immortal, and Qin Yu, who had been on guard, immediately attacked. Burier Heaven Sword Immortal's ancient sword cleaved down. A pitch-black sword beam blossomed with dazzling light as it cleaved down on the incoming sword tide. A loud dragon roar appeared on Qin Yu's body. An ancient dragon seal formed and pounced forward with bared fangs and brandished claws. A huge pitch-black whirlpool appeared in the dragon seal and swallowed a large portion of the sword wave. Under the attacks of Qin Yu and Sky Burier, Sword Immortal, more than half of the terrifying sword tide was neutralized. However, in the depths of the vast starry sky, there was a clear sword cry. Up, down, left, and right, the sound of swords humming could be heard from all directions. It was as if a group of mountains were humming, causing one's hair to stand on end. Qin Yu and Heaven-Bearing Sword Immortal exchanged glances. They knew that they could not afford to be delayed here. They had to end the battle quickly. Immediately, the two of them didn't hold back in the slightest. Both of them executed their ultimate techniques and completely obliterated the sword tide. After that, their figures flashed and appeared in front of the ancient sword light seal at the top of the Door of Light. Break! Qin Yu and Heaven-Bearing Sword Immortal attacked together. Earth-shattering doubt techniques condensed and exploded. At that moment, the sky exploded as an incomparably terrifying attack erupted. Crack! A layer of extremely ancient spirit formation power appeared on the ancient sword light seal. Even so, it couldn't stop the joint attack of Qin Yu and Heaven-Bearing Sword Immortal. Accompanied by a clear, cracking sound, the ancient sword light seal suddenly shattered and a palm-sized opening appeared. Qin Yu and Heaven-Bearing Sword Immortal's eyes flashed. They immediately executed their secret techniques and turned into two rays of light that escaped into the opening. Rumble! Almost at that moment, the void rumbled and trembled. Hundreds of millions of terrifying sword lights whizzed over and slashed at the opening of the ancient sword light seal. In an instant, the opening was sealed. If Qin Yu and Heaven-Bearing Sword Immortal had reacted slightly slower, they would have had to use a lot of means. Buzz, buzz, buzz. On the ancient Door of Light, the majestic figure holding the giant sword trembled slightly. Sword runes spread out on the ancient sword light seal. The opening created by Qin Yu and Heaven-Bearing Sword Immortal's bombardment was immediately restored to its original state. However, the hundreds of millions of sword lights didn't disappear. Instead, they danced around the ancient Door of Light. At that moment, Qin Yu and Heaven-Bearing Sword Immortal, who had entered the ancient Door of Light, appeared in an ancient and mysterious sword tomb. It was called a sword tomb because the stone coffins that appeared here were buried with ancient swords. Extremely terrifying sword power was sealed in the stone coffins. After counting carefully, there were a total of 999 stone coffins in the sword tomb. Moreover, the sword power contained in each stone coffin was enough to make an ancient emperor's heart palpitate. Look over there. Heaven-Bearing Sword Immortal sent a voice transmission to Qin Yu and signaled him to look at the center of the sword tomb. After Qin Yu looked over, his eyes narrowed slightly. In the center of the sword tomb, there was a 90-foot-tall stone chair. This stone chair was like a crane among chickens in this sword tomb, attracting the attention of others. This was because from the overall layout of the sword tomb, the 999 stone coffins with ancient swords seemed to be worshipping the stone chair. As if sensing Qin Yu and Heaven-Bearing Sword Immortal's gaze, the stone chair that was originally empty rippled. A figure wearing an ancient robe, who seemed to have come from the immemorial divine wilderness, appeared on the stone chair. The figure was the majestic figure that Qin Yu and Heaven-Bearing Sword Immortal had seen on the ancient Door of Light. Obviously, this figure was the spirit of the sword tomb that Heaven-Bearing Sword Immortal had mentioned. After thousands of years, you actually came here again. An old and deep voice sounded. After the figure's body flickered, his true face was revealed. It was a white-haired old man. He held a rusty, ancient sword in his hand. He looked ordinary and mediocre. However, the aura that he exuded made Qin Yu and heaven-bearing, sword immortal feel extreme danger. A late-stage, ancient emperor existence would definitely not have such a terrifying aura. Qin Yu now understood why Long Hao had such terrifying power after merging with the immortal sword intent. The cultivation of the spirit of the sword tomb was far stronger than Qin Yu had expected. Its strength was probably enough to fight against the blue Qian ice beast, or even stronger. After thousands of years, your cultivation has increased tremendously. Could it be that you have surpassed the limits of the ancient emperor realm? Heaven-burying sword immortal said slowly when he saw that the spirit of the sword tomb still remembered him. I have said that the limits of the ancient emperor realm is an insurmountable chasm for you. However, as long as you obtain my legacy, you can successfully surpass it. You did not believe me back then. Now, you must be regretting it. The spirit of the sword tomb let out a soft laugh. However, there was no fluctuation in his eyes that were as sharp as swords. They were completely cold. After hearing the spirit of the sword tomb, Qin Yu and heaven-bearing sword immortal thought of Long Hao. There was no doubt that Long Hao had fallen to such a state because he had believed the spirit of the sword tomb and inherited its legacy. If Long Hao had not been injured by the sky suppression ghost emperor, the spirit of the sword tomb would have taken over his body. Chapter 672. I do regret it a little. That's why I came here today. Sky Burier, Sword Saint smiled. Unfortunately, my inheritance has been inherited by someone else. You're too late. Leave. After the spirit of the sword mound sized up Qin Yu, it gave the order for him to leave. He's a guest from afar. Why are you in such a hurry? Burying Heaven's sword immortal, and Qin Yu took a glance at each other. The two of them walked toward the sword mound spirit. Since you don't want to leave, I'll send you on your way. Seeing this, the spirit of the sword tomb was filled with killing intent. Terrifying sword intent roared into the sky. All of the stone coffins in the sword tomb began to tremble. In the next instant, all the ancient swords sealed in the stone coffins rose into the sky and floated in the air. The tips of the swords flickered with cold light and were aimed at Qin Yu and Sky Burier Sword Saint. Moreover, there were many illusory figures appearing under each ancient sword. It was as if the illusory figures were the owners of the ancient swords. Kill. With a wave of the sword tomb's spirit's hand, the 999 ancient sword silhouettes charged toward Qin Yu and the burying Heaven sword immortal. The power surged like an apocalyptic tsunami. Yu was also like a torrential flood. Heavenly God's sword art. Sky Burier Sword Saint's eyes narrowed as he formed a sword seal. The ancient black sword formed thousands of sword shadows. Each sword shadow was filled with ancient and mysterious divine runes. The divine runes were completely different from Sky Burier Sword Saint's 3 moves. They contained supreme, divine power and were even more terrifying. Obviously, this was the supreme sword Dao that Sky Burier Sword Saint had comprehended after leaving the Heaven region in his previous life. Rumble. Under the Sky Burier Sword Saint's sword move, dozens of ancient swords held by the illusory figures were sent flying. In the clash of sword Dao, Sky Burier Sword Saint had the absolute upper hand. It was also at this time that Qin Yu realized that Sky Burier Sword Saint's cultivation had recovered to the late-stage ancient emperor realm. It seemed that the primordial immortal soul power obtained from the ancient immortal ruin had helped Sky Burier Sword Saint recover a lot of his vitality. Green Dragon fights the heavens. Sky-devouring dragon seal. Dragon god body. 9 hells purgatory. Heavenly stellar god light. Qin Yu wasn't idle either. A black light flashed in his hand, and the chaos dragon spear appeared. Following a violent and deafening dragon roar, Qin Yu immediately rushed out with the divine spear in his hand. Clang, clang, clang. The attacks from the ancient swords that came slashing from the front and back were all neutralized. The chaotic dragon spear's might, as a quasi-immortal artifact, was fully displayed at this moment. Those ancient swords were also of extraordinary quality. They were all ancient divine weapons. However, it was a pity that the chaotic dragon spear easily sent it flying away. It was unable to stop the attack of the chaotic dragon spear. However, he did not know what kind of energy the illusory figures wielding the ancient swords were. Not only was it immune to the heavenly domain Tao arts and soul Tao secret arts, even the heaven-burying sword immortal's immortal energy couldn't destroy it. Looks like I have to capture the king first. After neutralizing another wave of attacks, Qin Yu's eyes flickered as he looked at the spirit of the sword tomb, who had been watching coldly and didn't seem to be prepared to make a move. If this continued, there would be no end to it. Immediately, Qin Yu didn't hesitate. The long spear in his hand swept away the attacks coming at him from all directions. After that, he directly rushed towards the spirit of the sword tomb. Slash! Apparently, the heaven-bearing sword immortal had the same idea. He took a step forward, and like a ray of dim light traversed the void, he followed closely behind Qin Yu. A mere ant dares to attack me? Seeing this, the spirit of the sword tomb sneered. The rusty, ancient sword in his hand suddenly emitted a dazzling light that was as dazzling as the scorching sun. When the light dissipated, the ancient sword seemed to have unlocked some kind of seal. The rusty spots on the sword turned into ancient sword runes. The originally ordinary-looking ancient sword also became extraordinary and sacred, as if it contained an immortal divine power. Slash! The spirit of the sword tomb did not use any fancy attack. It simply slashed out with the sword. A ray of green sword light broke through the air like a green waterfall. Swoosh! Swoosh! The sword light was halfway through when the void suddenly trembled and immediately split into two, firmly locking onto Qin Yu and the heaven-burying sword immortal. Moreover, the 999 ancient swords that had been split apart by Qin Yu and the heaven-burying sword immortal once again whizzed over, firmly surrounding Qin Yu and the heaven-burying sword immortal. Boom! At this critical moment, surging demonic chi erupted from Qin Yu's body. Accompanied by vast demonic chi, the ancestor demon statue appeared and punched at the incoming green sword light. An ear-splitting explosion suddenly resounded. The green sword light was shattered, and the ancestor demon statue was repeatedly pushed back. On its right fist, there was a clear sword mark. Clearly, it had been cut by the green sword light. Swoosh! At this moment, Qin Yu's figure flashed past the ancestor demon statue and appeared in front of the spirit of the sword tomb. The chaotic dragon spear was like a dragon emerging from the sea. With the power to destroy the world, it violently stabbed at the spirit of the sword tomb. Clang! The spirit of the sword tomb blocked with its sword. Amidst the explosion of flames, the dense and substantial Tao power was like two evil dragons, killing and devouring each other. This feeling, Qin Yu, who had attacked with all his strength, couldn't hide the surprise in his eyes. The spirit of the sword tomb took the attack of the chaotic dragon spear without being affected in the slightest. The ancient sword that emitted demonic chi was also not damaged in the slightest. Its quality seemed to be on par with the chaotic dragon spear. But what really caught Qin Yu's attention was the sword intent emitted by the spirit of the sword tomb, which he was extremely familiar with. Die! While Qin Yu and the spirit of the sword tomb were locked in a stalemate, the heaven-burying sword immortal seized the opportunity to attack. Thousands of sword lights merged into one in the void, condensing into a pitch-black divine sword. With a flash of light, the pitch-black ancient sword under the control of the heaven-burying sword immortal viciously slashed at the spirit of the sword tomb. The spirit of the sword tomb held the sword in its right hand to block Qin Yu's attack, while its left hand clasped two fingers together and pointed in the air. Dozens of ancient swords flew rapidly from all directions. Those ancient swords merged with the sword tips and turned into a rotating sword disc, accurately blocking the heaven-burying sword immortal's attack. At the same time, the other ancient swords in the sword tomb turned into sword lights and slashed at Qin Yu and the heaven-burying sword immortal. Roar! Seeing this, Qin Yu let out an earth-shattering dragon roar. A terrifying chaotic chi filled the air, and a chaotic ancient dragon that was thousands of feet long appeared. After the chaotic ancestor dragon appeared, it spat out a mouthful of chaotic dragon breath, which surrounded Qin Yu and the heaven-burying sword immortal. Clanging sounds immediately rang out. Bang! At the same time, the chaotic ancestor dragon rushed out like a chaotic torrent and slammed into the sword disc, directly knocking it away. The heaven-burying sword immortal seized the opportunity and slashed with his sword. The sword light was as deep as a black hole, containing an incomparably terrifying power. The spirit of the sword tomb's expression changed slightly. It couldn't care less about the stalemate with Qin Yu, and its figure moved slightly, ready to escape. Seal! But at this moment, Qin Yu's heart stirred. In the ancient dragon god seal, Long Hao's body, which was sealed by the blue ice, was invaded by a terrifying cold force, as if it wanted to destroy Long Hao's soul. Buzz! The immortal sword intent in Long Hao's soul immediately resisted. After the violent collision, Long Hao's body shook, his face turned pale, and a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Chapter 673. This is the spirit of the sword mound, who was about to escape, stiffened as disbelief surfaced in its eyes. It could clearly sense that there was a chaotic fluctuation within the spirit of the sword mound. As expected, Qin Yu instantly sensed it as a cold light flashed in his eyes. He had already sensed that the sword intent of the sword mound was one with the sword intent within Long Hao's body. No, it should be said that the sword intent merging with Long Hao's soul was purer than the spirit of the sword mound. From the looks of it, it was as if that sword intent was the soul of the sword tomb's spirit. Whoosh! Sky Burier, sword immortal, took advantage of this moment of hesitation and slashed at the spirit of the sword mound. Qin Yu also took the opportunity to attack. The chaotic dragon spear exploded as a terrifying force drowned the spirit of the sword mound. Rumble! Along with an explosion, the sword tomb spirit was sent flying and slammed into a stone coffin, causing a crack to appear on the stone coffin. At this moment, Qin Yu and the heaven-burying sword immortal, who were planning to seize the opportunity to attack, both turned their heads and looked over. Among the dozens of ancient swords fighting with the ancestral demon statue, the illusory figure under one of the ancient swords had clearly become much fainter. Even the divine power emitted by the ancient sword had been greatly weakened. Could it be? Qin Yu and Sky Burier, sword immortal, looked at each other, understanding the meaning in each other's eyes. They hadn't been able to find the weakness of those ancient swords, but now it seemed that the weakness of those ancient swords was right in front of them. Thinking of this, their gazes turned towards the spirit of the sword mound. What's going on? Why was Master's sword intent damaged at such a critical moment? The spirit of the sword mound that had been sent flying by Qin Yu's spear came back to his senses and sized up Qin Yu and Sky Burier, sword immortal, with a bewildered expression. Just now, his master's sword intent had become chaotic at the critical moment of the battle. It was very difficult for him to think that it was a coincidence. But after carefully sensing it, the spirit of the sword mound didn't sense the slightest fluctuation of sword intent from Qin Yu and Sky Burier, sword immortal. This made the spirit of the sword tomb completely confused, and a strong sense of danger rose in its heart. High-speed Dowart. At the moment when the spirit of the sword mound was shocked, Qin Yu once again charged out. He was as fast as a ray of light. However, his target this time was not the spirit of the sword tomb, but the 90-foot stone chair. Stop! Seeing this, the spirit of the sword tomb's pupils shrank to the size of needles. It no longer had the time to think about the origin sword intent, and immediately rushed towards Qin Yu with a terrifying aura, wanting to stop Qin Yu. Whoosh! However, a deafening sword cry rang out, and a figure appeared in front of the spirit of the sword mound like a ghost. A dazzling sword light slashed toward the spirit of the sword tomb, completely sealing the space around it. It was Zhang Tian's sword deity. Rumble! Immediately, an earth-shattering battle broke out again. The spirit of the Sword Tomb had condensed the power of the entire Sword Tomb. Its strength was strong enough to crush heaven-burying Sword Immortal. However, heaven-burying Sword Immortal had left the Sky region before and had even surpassed the limits of the Ancient Emperor realm. Although heaven-burying Sword Immortal was at a disadvantage in the face of the spirit of the Sword Tomb's storm-like destructive attacks, he managed to withstand them and was not defeated easily. At this time, Qin had already rushed to the stone chair. The chaotic dragon runes on the chaotic dragon spear lit up, and an extremely terrifying fluctuation was brewing. Crack! In the next moment, Qin let out a low roar, and the chaotic dragon spear was like a Shenron overturning the sea. With the power to destroy the world, it suddenly bombarded the stone chair. With a loud bang, the stone chair was immediately smashed into pieces and turned into powder that scattered in all directions. Immediately, the spirit of the Sword Tomb, which was suppressing heaven-burying Sword Immortal's attacks, trembled. His originally incomparably violent and terrifying aura had clearly become disorderly and weak at this moment. 10,000 swords in one. The severely injured spirit of the Sword Tomb suddenly changed its hand seals, and a mysterious sword power spread out. After the 999 ancient swords in the Sword Tomb trembled, they turned into sword shadows and rushed at the spirit of the Sword Tomb. It looked like it was going to kill the spirit of the Sword Tomb. Destroy the stone coffins. Seeing this, Qin Yu and heaven-burying Sword Immortal did not stop it. They all attacked together, unleashing terrifying destructive attacks at the 900 stone coffins. Rumble. Under the combined attacks of Qin Yu, heaven-burying Sword Immortal, the Chaos Ancestor Dragon, and the Ancestor Demon Statue. In just a breath's time, all the stone coffins in the Sword Tomb were destroyed. As for the remaining ancient swords in the Sword Tomb, not a single one was left. They had all merged into the spirit of the Sword Tomb. Even so, the spirit of the Sword Tomb's aura was not much stronger. Its chaotic and weak aura could not be concealed at all. You all deserve to die. The spirit of the Sword Tomb's cold and indifferent eyes were filled with bone-chilling, killing intent as it stared eerily at Qin Yu and heaven-burying Sword Immortal. As soon as its voice fell, a vast sword intent descended from the sky of the Sword Tomb without any warning. The sword intent was extremely ancient, as if it had transcended time and space and came from the ancient mythological era. At that moment, the entire eternal Sword Tomb began to tremble. Countless sword intents of all shapes and sizes gathered towards the Sword Tomb at this moment. Many experts who were exploring the eternal Sword Tomb felt an extreme sense of danger in their hearts. At this moment, the eternal Sword Tomb was like a peerless, ferocious beast that had awakened. It had enough power to destroy heaven and earth, so they did not dare to act rashly. The aura is getting stronger and stronger. When Qin Yu saw this scene, with a thought, the immortal extermination ancient diagram in the divine dragon ancient seal trembled. An incomparably terrifying killing intent filled Qin Yu's body. Even if Qin Yu used the Azure Dragon Battle the heavens and the divine dragon tyrannical body, he felt that his flesh and bones were constantly being torn apart by the killing intent at this moment. Qin Yu had no choice but to use the 8 trigrams dragon transformation and enter the dragon transformation state. Sword Sealing Token. At this moment, Sky Burier Sword Deity also used his trump card at this time. Sky Burier Sword Deity pointed his finger, and an ancient sword token broke through the air and hit the vast sword intent that was constantly descending from afar. Immediately, an extremely shocking scene appeared. The vast sword intent that was enough to trigger the entire Eternal Sword Tomb was actually sealed by Sky Burier Sword Deity's ancient sword token, completely cutting off the connection between it and the spirit of the Sword Tomb. This is the Sword Domain Divine Treasure, the Sword Sealing Token. You have already been to the Sword Domain. When the spirit of the Sword Tomb saw the ancient token that sealed the sword intent, a look of disbelief appeared in its gloomy and bone-chilling eyes. Kill. However, before Sky Burier Sword Deity could react, Qin Yu, who was already prepared, suddenly rushed out. In a flash, Qin Yu appeared in front of the spirit of the sword tomb and suddenly struck out with his palm. As the void trembled, a mysterious ancient diagram suddenly appeared and completely enveloped the spirit of the sword tomb. Damn it, break! The spirit of the sword tomb was furious and used all of its killing moves to break the immortal extermination ancient diagram. Unfortunately, the killing intent contained in the immortal extermination ancient diagram was extremely terrifying. No matter how hard the spirit of the sword tomb struggled, it was useless and was forcefully suppressed. Chapter 674. Refine. Qin Yu did not hesitate and immediately put away the immortal extermination ancient diagram. He sat cross-legged and sank his mind into the ancient seal of the dragon god. The Chaos Ancestor Dragon and the Ancestor Demon statue appeared beside Qin Yu, one on the left and one on the right. After the Sky Burier, Sword Immortal, took a look, he did not approach Qin Yu. He walked to the front of the vast sword intent and carefully felt the mysteries contained in the vast sword intent. One must know that this vast sword intent had merged with the sword intent of the entire Eternal Sword Tomb. This was naturally a rare opportunity for the Sky Burier, Sword Immortal, who was a sword cultivator. Qin Yu, who was protected by the Chaos Ancestor Dragon and the Ancestor Demon statue, was already fully focused on suppressing the spirit of the Sword Tomb. After the previous battle, Qin Yu already understood that the source of the immortal sword intent in Long Hao's soul was the Eternal Sword Tomb. The spirit of the Sword Tomb was the carrier of the two powers. Therefore, the immortal sword intent contained such terrifying power and even the spirit of the Sword Tomb. If it had not merged with Long Hao's soul, there was probably nothing in this world that could destroy the immortal sword intent. After all, to a certain extent, the immortal sword intent was equivalent to the Eternal Sword Tomb. In the 9 states of the Heaven Domain, no one had the power to destroy the Eternal Sword Tomb. Therefore, as long as Qin Yu suppressed the spirit of the Sword Tomb, it was equivalent to cutting off the source of the immortal sword intent's power. At that time, with Qin Yu's help, Long Hao would definitely be able to suppress the immortal sword intent in his soul and take control of his body. Qin Yu activated the space-time power of the Dragon Soul and refined it at dozens of times the speed. The spirit of the Sword Tomb was weakened to the extreme, with only a trace of weak spiritual fluctuation. At such a critical moment, the spirit of the Sword Tomb, who had already gained sentience, chose to submit to Qin Yu in order to survive. Qin Yu did not kill it and immediately placed a restriction on the spirit of the Sword Tomb. At this point, the spirit of the Sword Tomb was subdued by Qin Yu. That being said, Qin Yu did not release the spirit of the Sword Tomb from the immortal execution ancient pattern right away. With the help of the spirit of the Sword Tomb, Qin Yu made rapid progress in suppressing the immortal sword essence. Several years passed in the Divine Dragon Ancient Seal, and more than a month passed in the outside world. Long Hao's soul, who had been unconscious all this time, suddenly rippled. Qin Yu instantly sensed it, and his expression changed. Sure enough, as the ripple became increasingly intense, the eyes of the unconscious Long Hao slowly opened. Must have. Long Hao looked at the young man's appearance, but his aura was that of Qin Yu's soul. When he woke up, he was still in a daze, as if he hadn't completely woken up yet. He's finally awake. Qin Yu wore a smile on his face. Master, it's really you? Hearing Qin Yu's words, Long Hao came back to his senses. He stood up and looked at Qin Yu with excitement. Don't let your guard down. Hurry up and refine the sword essence. Qin Yu immediately reminded Long Hao when he sensed that the immortal sword essence that had been suppressed in Long Hao's soul was becoming restless again. The sword essence has merged with me? Long Hao finally reacted. He was in disbelief. He was clearly aware of how terrifying the might contained within this sword intent was. Previously, he had only absorbed less than 30% of the sword essence, and he had dared to ambush Ghost Emperor Jintian. Long Hao did not expect that the current sword intent would actually fuse with his soul. What he did not expect, even more, was that Qin Yu actually had a way to suppress that sword intent. After listening to Qin Yu's explanation, Long Hao immediately sat down with his legs crossed and cooperated with Qin Yu to suppress the immortal sword essence. After 3 months, Long Hao finally managed to refine the immortal sword essence. At this point, Long Hao's cultivation had completely stabilized at the peak of the late-stage Ancient Emperor realm. It was only a matter of time before he reached the peak Ancient Emperor realm. However, after refining the immortal sword essence, Long Hao exclaimed softly, "What's wrong?" Qin Yu asked. "Master, this sword essence doesn't seem to be separated from the spirit of the sword tomb," Long Hao said. After refining the sword essence, although he could sense the spirit of the sword tomb and the eternal sword tomb, he could sense the power of the eternal sword tomb more clearly. The spirit of the sword tomb was relatively blurry and faint. "What's going on?" Qin Yu called out the spirit of the sword tomb. "That sword essence is indeed not separated from me. It is the sword essence that my master left behind. I originally wanted to use that sword essence to possess a physical body. Unfortunately, it is too rare to find a host that can merge with my master's sword essence. In the past tens of thousands of years, only one person has successfully merged with the sword essence. The spirit of the sword tomb, who was under the restriction, was quite cooperative this time. Originally, with the spirit of the sword tomb's ability, it was not difficult for him to possess a physical body. But if he did so, it meant that he would have to give up the inheritance that his master left behind. Therefore, the spirit of the sword tomb stayed in the Thousand Ghost sword tomb and did not leave. That person is me? Long Hao understood. No wonder the spirit of the sword tomb was so generous to help him back then. The spirit of the sword tomb nodded slightly. "So, this eternal sword tomb was also left behind by your master." Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He was also quite curious about the master of the eternal sword tomb. It was said that the master of the eternal sword tomb was an invincible sword immortal from the previous generation. He had left behind a strong legend in the history of the Qin Yuan domain, but there were no records of the invincible sword immortal's true origin. It was as if the invincible sword cultivator had appeared out of thin air. There were even countless rumors that the invincible sword cultivator was not from the Qin Yuan domain, but an expert from another domain. That's right. This eternal sword tomb is my master's natal divine treasure. Only the person who has merged with my master's sword essence can obtain my master's inheritance and control the eternal sword tomb. This was also the reason why the spirit of the sword tomb cared so much about his master's sword essence. He wanted to obtain his master's inheritance and become famous in the heavens. "Where did your master come from? He shouldn't be from the Qin Yuan domain, right?" Qin Yu asked again. "My master came from the sword domain. As for his purpose, I don't know. At that time, I was just born. I only know that after my master came, there seemed to be a great battle. That battle left my master severely injured and on the verge of death. In the end, he had no choice but to pass away here." The spirit of the sword tomb revealed a nostalgic look. After a great battle, he was severely injured and on the verge of death. Qin Yu's eyes flickered. According to various ancient records, the master of the spirit of the sword tomb was an invincible existence that swept across the entire Qin Yuan domain. His cultivation was probably far beyond the limit of the ancient emperor realm. For him to be severely injured and on the verge of death, could it be for the immortal treasury? After pondering for a while, Qin Yu couldn't help but have this thought. Although there were many miracles in the 9 continents of the Qin Yuan domain, the most mysterious one was naturally the immortal treasury. Qin Yu had this thought after seeing the white-clothed woman who was once an ancient immortal and knowing that the immortal treasury contained the inheritance of immortal King Zhanlong. Chapter 675. Boom! Suddenly, Qin Yu and Long Hao's expressions changed. They felt a powerful and terrifying sword aura descend from the outside world, suppressing their souls. My master's tomb, secret realm, has been activated. The spirit of the sword tomb sensed it and quickly spoke. Qin Yu squinted his eyes and returned to his body. Long Hao and the spirit of the sword tomb also appeared in the sword tomb. Qin Yu looked up and saw a door of light at the center of the sword tomb. Through the door of light, he could see a small secret realm inside. It was probably only a few hundred miles wide, smaller than the sword tomb. In the center of the secret realm was a sword tomb built by countless ancient swords formed by sword intent. A figure was lying quietly on top of the sword tomb. It seems that this secret realm is the true secret of the eternal sword tomb. Sky Burier, sword immortal, said to Qin Yu when he saw that Qin Yu had woken up. Although he said that, the Sky Burier, sword immortal, stood before the secret realm with a grave expression. He did not step into the secret realm. This was because the sword aura emitted from the secret realm was so terrifying that even Sky Burier, sword immortal, who had the sword sealing token, did not dare to step into it. This is the fluctuation of the immortal path? No, it's different from the pure fluctuation of the immortal path. Qin Yu walked to the door of light. After sensing it slightly, a strange look flashed in his eyes. Qin Yu sensed the fluctuation of the immortal path from the terrifying sword aura. However, compared to Sky Burier, sword immortal, Qin Yu was much more relaxed. This was because the immortal path fluctuation in the terrifying sword aura was suppressed to the extreme by the immemorial battle dragon art. As a result, the terrifying sword might was also suppressed. As for Long Hao, who was refining the immortal sword intent, he did not have much of a reaction. This was because the terrifying sword aura and the immortal sword intent came from the same source. They were both left by the sword spirit's owner. Let's go in and take a look. After observing for a while, Qin Yu stepped out and entered the door of light. Long Hao did not hesitate and followed Qin Yu into the door of light. Seeing that Qin Yu and Long Hao had entered unscathed, the heaven-burying sword immortal's eyes flickered. He wanted to enter as well. However, the instant it came into contact with the door of light, the terrifying sword intent was like an awakened giant beast as it charged out with a loud bang. Fortunately, at the critical moment, Heaven Burier, sword immortal, immediately used the sword sealing token to resist, so he wasn't injured. The Chaos Ancestral Dragon, who had been itching to make a move, immediately calmed down when it saw what happened to the sky-burying sword immortal. Together with the ancestral demon statue, it stood guard outside quietly. The primal Chaos Ancestor Dragon's battle prowess was comparable to a late-stage ancient emperor in the sky region. However, compared to the current Heaven's Burial Sword, their strength was probably on par. Since Sky Burier, sword immortal, a sword cultivator, was unable to enter, the primal Chaos Ancestor Dragon's chances of success were naturally not high. What a powerful sword might! Inside the light gate, Qin Yu's eyes narrowed slightly. After stepping through the light gate, Qin Yu truly felt the terror of the sword might. If the immemorial battle dragon art had not weakened the immortal Tao ripples contained in the sword might, Qin Yu would not have been able to step through the light gate. Seeing this, Long Hao immediately activated the immortal sword intent in his soul, emitting a layer of sword intent that scattered around him and Qin Yu to resist the sword intent. Master, the spirit of the sword tomb, who was following Long Hao, looked at the person lying on the sword tomb with excitement in its eyes. Buzz, buzz, buzz. As Long Hao approached, a terrifying power was emitted from the sword tomb formed by sword intent. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the next instant, before Long Hao could react, countless rays of light rushed into Long Hao's glabella. In an instant, the sword tomb formed by sword intent turned into rays of light and disappeared. The master of the spirit of the sword tomb also disappeared with it. Don't be nervous. This is the inheritance left behind by master. Seeing Long Hao and Qin Yu react immediately, the spirit of the sword tomb said. As expected, as the rays of light entered Long Hao's glabella, countless insights into the mysteries of the sword Tao appeared in his mind. In addition, After reaching the ninth level of the martial path, the comprehension of the heavenly path true energy appeared one after another like bamboo after the rain. After seeing that Long Hao was fine, Qin Yu looked at the other parts of the secret realm. Then, Qin Yu's gaze fell on a certain part of the secret realm. There was a stone tablet that was about 10 feet tall there. Countless ancient words were inscribed on the stone tablet. Those words were not in any language of the heavenly domain, and Qin Yu could not understand them at all. However, the words on the stone tablet contained extremely terrifying true energy ripples, but it was not martial path true energy. Heavenly path true energy. It was not the first time Qin Yu had sensed such true energy ripples. Back in the extraterritorial demon race's territory, Qin Yu had sensed heavenly path true energy ripples from the Luosha Crown Prince, who was by Star Luo's side. However, the heavenly path true energy contained in the stone tablet was far above that of the Luosha Crown Prince. It looked like the owner of the sword-tuned spirit was not an ordinary person, even in the extraterritorial domain. In fact, Qin Yu had seen heavenly path true energy in his previous life and even studied it. Unfortunately, he did not know what heavenly path true energy was at that time, so he stopped halfway through the refinement when he sensed that something was wrong. If Qin Yu had known that after the ninth level of the martial path was the ninth level of the heavenly path, he would have reached the ninth level of the martial path in his previous life. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. When all the rays of light entered Long Hao's glabella, Long Hao was struck by an invisible force. Long Hao was guided by an invisible force and formed an ancient sword with the power of the sword Dao. Then, they started to dance around in this secret realm, as if they were cultivating various sword Dao mystic skills and secret arts. As Long Hao danced with the sword, the door of light outside the secret realm suddenly disappeared. At the same time, a layer of dreamy light descended and enveloped Long Hao's body, making it impossible for others to see him clearly. It looked like it was to prevent others from secretly learning the secret techniques that Long Hao had inherited. Seeing that the entrance had disappeared, Qin Yu decided to focus all his attention on the stone tablet. After looking at it for a short while, Qin Yu, who had some clues, suddenly made his move. Qin Yu pointed at the steel with his finger. The spirit energy on the steel started to ripple like the surface of water. Then, the ripples grew heavier and heavier, gradually forming a ripple vortex. Break! After being in a deadlock with a ripple vortex formed by the spirit power for a long time, Long Hao finally unleashed his full power. Qin Yu let out a low shout. He gathered the killing intent of the immortal sacrificial technique and the immortal slaying ancient diagram and unleashed them together. With a loud bang, Qin Yu's finger exploded. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. This was because the killing intent of the immortal sacrificial technique and the immortal slaying ancient diagram were too powerful, and Qin Yu's body was unable to contain them. However, as Qin Yu's finger exploded, the spirit power vortex on the stone tablet also dispersed with a bang. However, it only lasted for an instant before the spirit power vortex on the stone tablet rapidly recovered. Qin Yu's eyes shone. With his sharp eyes and nimble hands, he moved his left hand and immediately captured a strand of heavenly path true energy from the stone tablet. Then, with a flash, he moved back. Soon, as pure dragon aura filled the air, Qin Yu's exploded finger began to rapidly regrow flesh and bones at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, it was completely healed. Chapter 676. Qin Yu narrowed his eyes as he looked at the heavenly path primordial essence sealed in his left palm. Qin Yu was naturally curious about the heavenly path primordial essence. This was because the heavenly path primordial essence was the realm after the martial path primordial essence. However, compared to crossing the ninth level of the martial path and stepping into the ninth level of the heavenly path, Qin Yu wanted to use the martial path quintessential yuan to confirm his guess. It was a guess that had appeared since the peak of his previous life. Primordial battle dragon art, refine. Without hesitation, he immediately sat cross-legged in the air and circulated the primordial battle dragon art. The majestic battle dragon primordial essence roared out and pulled the heavenly path primordial essence into his body to refine it. Time passed quietly as Qin Yu refined the heavenly path primordial essence and Long Hao obtained the inheritance outside the secret realm in the sword tomb. Sky Burier, sword immortal, who was meditating, looked at a certain void in the sword tomb. The primordial chaos ancestor dragon also sensed it and looked at that void. Although the ancestor demon statue did not look over, the demonic aura around it grew denser. There was a trace of Qin Yu's soul power in the ancestor demon statue. Although it did not have intelligence, it could still react if an enemy invaded. Someone else found this place? Sky Burier, sword immortal, raised his eyebrows and stood up, sword intent roaring around him. Rumble. After a few dozen breaths of time, a hole appeared in the void of the sword tomb where Sky Burier, sword immortal, was looking. Immediately after, several figures flashed in at high speed, accompanied by the figures that came in. There was also terrifying sword light as vast as a river rushing in. In an instant, more than half of the sword tomb was filled with sword light like swimming fish. Only then did Sky Burier, sword immortal, and the primordial chaos ancestor dragon clearly see the figures that rushed in. There were a total of 7 people. If Qin Yu was here, he would definitely recognize that these 7 were late-stage ancient emperors of the middle ground. The leader was Ghost Emperor Zhentian, followed by North Emperor Luan, 4 Symbols Dao Emperor, Ancient Mystic Demon Emperor, Blood Fiend Spirit Emperor, Heaven-Hating Sword Emperor, and Profound Eyes Heaven Emperor. The 7 great ancient emperors, even in the central region, where the experts of the heaven domain gathered, were all top-notch existences. Could this person be the person the Berserk Dragon Sovereign hunted down before? That devil cultivator is actually emitting the devil chi of the ancient devil clan. Could it be that the ancient devil clan planted him here? The expressions of Ghost Emperor Zhentian and the others changed slightly when they saw the Sky Burier, sword immortal, and the ancestral demon statue. Although they did not recognize Sky Burier, sword immortal, they had heard about Star Luo's pursuit of Sky Burier, sword immortal. Now that he saw heaven-burying sword immortal here, he was naturally surprised. As for the ancestral devil statue, the pure aura of the extraterritorial devil race emitted from its body made them even more astonished. After carefully sizing up Sky Burier, sword immortal, and the ancestral demon statue, Ghost Emperor Zhentian, Ghost Emperor Luanbei, and the 4 Symbols Dao Emperor all looked at the primal chaos ancestor dragon. They had joined forces with the other 4 great ancient emperors to come here for Qin Yu. Qin Yu had been titled the Dragon God Sovereign and had mastered thousands of dragon race mystiques. Now that they saw the legendary primal chaos ancestor dragon here, they were naturally very concerned. 7 late-stage ancient emperors. Sky Burier, sword immortal's eyes flashed slightly. With his cultivation, he naturally did not fear the late-stage ancient emperors of the Sky region. However, facing 7 of them at once was still a little stressful. After all, he had joined forces with Qin Yu in the current situation. Naturally, he could not abandon Qin Yu and leave if he could not win. Fortunately, the primal chaos ancestor dragon and the ancestral demon statue could also fight against late-stage ancient emperors. The situation was not extremely disadvantageous for them. Ghost Emperor Zhentian, is there something wrong with your information? Blood Fiend Spirit Emperor, who was surrounded by dense blood fiend chi, asked Ghost Emperor Zhentian telepathically as he scanned the entire sword tomb. Although the sword tomb was huge, with their cultivation, they would naturally be able to sense whether or not there were other people hidden in it. He must be hiding somewhere. If we do not kill him today, there will be endless trouble in the future. Ghost Emperor Zhentian's eyes were filled with ghost chi as he carefully scanned the sword tomb. Since they had suspected Qin Yu, the 3 of them had been well prepared. Naturally, they would not make such a mistake. Otherwise, they would not have been able to follow all the way here. Sir, may I know where the sacred dragon sect leader is now? The four symbols Tao Emperor looked at Sky, Burier, Sword Immortal, and cupped his fists. His attitude was not overbearing. After all, Sky, Burier, Sword Immortal might be a sword cultivator who could escape from Xing Luo. If they had any other choice, they would not want to provoke such a strong enemy. He is not here, Sky Burier, Sword Immortal said faintly. His goal was to take revenge for what had happened to Xing Luo in his previous life. As for Ghost Emperor Jintian and the others, they were Qin Yu's enemies. They had nothing to do with him. Hearing Sky Burier, Sword Immortal's words, the four symbols Tao Emperor looked at Sky Burier, Sword Immortal deeply before looking at Ghost Emperor Jintian. Blood Fiend Spiritual Emperor and the others also looked at Ghost Emperor Jintian. Ghost Emperor Jintian raised his eyebrows. Ghost Qi filled his eerie eyes as a strange light flashed. It seemed like he was executing some secret technique. May I know what is your relationship with the sacred dragon sect leader? Ghost Emperor Luan Bei asked after looking at Sky Burier, Sword Immortal, for a while. What does my relationship with him have to do with you? Sky Burier, Sword Immortal said faintly. The sacred dragon sect leader and a few of us have some grudges. Ghost Emperor Luan Bei said with a heavier tone. If Sky Burier, Sword Immortal, had nothing to do with Qin Yu, then he should not be an enemy of the 7 late-stage ancient emperors. So, what does this have to do with me? Sky Burier, Sword Immortal said calmly. Although the Sky Burier, Sword Deity, felt pressured when it was 3 against 7, it was only a slight pressure for him. He was once the master of Qin Yu and had ruled the Sky region for an era. He had also surpassed the limits of the ancient emperor realm. 7 late-stage ancient emperors were not enough to make Sky Burier, Sword Immortal, retreat. He is still here. There should be some kind of boundary or secret realm here. Ghost Emperor Jintian, who seemed to have used some kind of secret technique and carefully sensed the situation, spoke slowly. As he spoke, Ghost Emperor Jintian looked at Sky Burier, Sword Immortal, Chaotic Ancestor Dragon, and the Primogenitor Demon Statue. Although they could not sense it, there was no doubt that Sky Burier, Sword Immortal, and the other 2 knew about Qin Yu's whereabouts. Sir, we have no intention of offending you. However, we must find the whereabouts of the sacred dragon sect leader. If you do not cooperate, don't blame us for being impolite. Hearing Ghost Emperor Jintian's words, the 4 symbols Tao Emperor took a step forward. Thousands of Tao inscriptions were released from his body. Countless Tao inscriptions danced in the sky and turned the sword tomb into a 4 symbols ancient array. Within the ancient array, there were flowers, plants, birds, beasts, mountains, rivers, and stars. There was a cycle of life and death. It was the universal Tao of 4 symbols that the 4 symbols Tao Emperor had comprehended. Chapter 677. You can try if you want to die. Sky Burier, Sword Immortal's eyes turned cold as sword runes appeared on the black, ancient sword in his hand. An extremely terrifying sword power radiated from Sky Burier, Sword Immortal's body. Sky Hatred Sword Emperor, who was also a sword cultivator, sensed the terrifying sword power from Sky Burier, Sword Immortal's body, and his face turned serious. He sensed danger from the heaven-bearing Sword Immortal. If it was a one-on-one battle, he would have no chance of winning. Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor and the other 4 also sensed this. However, they were more concerned about Qin Yu's whereabouts. After all, compared to Dragon God Emperor, Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor, Sky Burier Sword Immortal was much weaker than Dragon God Emperor. Therefore, even if they had to offend Sky Burier Sword Immortal, they had to find Qin Yu's whereabouts. Let's see who is courting death. God suppressing the world. North Emperor Luan Bei attacked first. After chanting, he formed a seal with his hands, and a sacred and inviolable aura spread out. Behind North Emperor Luan Bei, an illusory figure of a god appeared, and a divine power that could suppress the 9 heavens and 10 lands spread out. Hao Qian Ghost Tao. Ghost Emperor Jintian's eyes turned cold and sinister. After a low roar, ghost fog rose from his body. Within the ghostly fog, there were several extremely terrifying auras. It was as if the ghostly fog contained some sort of extremely terrifying living being. Sky suppression, Ghost Emperor's Sacred Island's superpower inheritance, came from the ghost race of the Qin-Yun realm. Unfortunately, the ghost race disappeared in the long river of history, and the ghost Dao superpower inheritance was obtained by Ghost Emperor's Sacred Island. Sky suppression, Ghost Emperor had comprehended his own ghost Dao superpower from the ghost ancestor's inheritance, and it was called Haoyan Ghost Dao. Ancient Demon Descends. Demonic Emperor Gu Xian was one of the few demon Dao superpowers in the Qin-Yun realm. After using the demon Dao superpower, demonic runes spread out all over his body, and his body immediately enlarged. In an instant, he became a demon lord that was dozens of feet tall. This was the ancient demon Dao that demonic Emperor Gu Xian comprehended from the ancient demon god statue of the primordial era. This demon Dao superpower was known as the #1 demon Dao superpower. Sky Blood Evil Dao. The Blood Fiend Spirit Emperor was one of the few blood cultivation ancient emperors in the Heaven Domain. Regardless of whether it was the Devil Cultivator or the Blood Cultivator, they were all regarded as heretical in the 9 continents of the Heaven Domain. It was difficult for them to attain the Great Tao. However, if he could make up for his flaws and stand out, he would be even harder to deal with than the ordinary ancient emperors. This was also the reason why Ghost Emperor Zhentian and the others had joined forces with Demon Emperor Gu Xian and Spirit Emperor Xuexia when the extraterritorial demon race invaded. Absolute Heaven-Killing Sword. The Heaven Spite Sword Emperor had a solemn expression. After he unsheathed his Emperor's sword, he became extremely sharp, and his sword power that contained boundless killing intent swept across the sky. The strength of the aura was enough to cause the fishes in the sword tomb to resonate with it. The Heaven Spite Sword Emperor had the title of the strongest sword emperor in the Heaven Domain. He was known as the #1 Sword Dao Cultivator. Mystic Ice Immortal Dao. The Heavenly Emperor of Black Ice had the innate black ice body and the power of innate black ice. In the world of martial artists, he was not very famous. However, among the late-stage ancient emperors in the Central Continent, very few people dared to provoke him. The Heavenly Emperor of Black Ice not only had the innate black ice body, but he had also obtained the inheritance of the immemorial Ice Immortal. He was also one of the rarest ancient emperors in the Heaven Domain who had obtained the inheritance of the immemorial Ice Immortal. Heavenly God Sword Art. Seeing this, the Sky Burier Sword Immortal did not hesitate and used his strongest sword Dao technique. Countless sword shadows danced in the void and attacked Ghost Emperor Zhentian and the other 4 Ghost Emperors. Roar! The primal chaos ancestor dragon roared at the sky and charged towards Ghost Emperor Zhentian and the others with a vast primal chaos dragon aura. As he charged out, the primal chaos ancestor dragon roared, and countless primal chaos lights shot out from his dragon scales. Each of the primal chaos lights contained a terrifying aura. Even a late-stage ancient emperor would be frightened by the number of primal chaos lights. Boom! Among the 3, the primal chaos ancestor demon statue was the most direct. After forming the 3-headed and 6-armed figure, it charged towards Ghost Emperor Zhentian and the others. The 6 arms of the primal chaos ancestor demon statue blasted out as 6 paths of reincarnation shadow that scattered Ghost Emperor Zhentian and the others. The original 3 against 7 became Ghost Emperor Zhentian, the 4 symbols Dao Emperor, and the Heaven Spite Sword Emperor against the Sky Burier Sword Immortal. Ghost Emperor Luan Bei and the Blood Fiend Spirit Emperor against the Primal Chaos Ancestor Dragon. The Ancient Mystic Demonic Emperor and the Black Ice Heavenly Emperor against the Primal Chaos Ancestor Demon Statue. The 10 of them unleashed an earth-shattering battle in this sword tomb. Dao techniques of different attributes violently collided in the void, causing the void to faintly become a little unstable. If the creator of this sword tomb wasn't the owner of the spirit of the sword tomb, it would have collapsed long ago. Ghost Emperor Zhentian and the others. In the secret realm, Qin Yu, who was refining the heavenly path primordial energy, sensed the terrifying Tao technique fluctuations outside through the primal chaos ancestor demon statue. Qin Yu frowned slightly. At this time, refining the heavenly path primordial energy had reached the most critical moment. Qin Yu felt that his martial path realm was clearly loosening. This was a sign that he might break through. At this time, Qin Yu was in a dilemma. He did not know if he should continue refining the heavenly path primordial energy or deal with Ghost Emperor Tian and the others first. It was impossible for Ghost Emperor Tian and the others to come here, so coincidentally. It was most likely that the battle in the East Continent had made them realize his identity. Buzz! Just as Qin Yu was thinking, a soft trembling sound suddenly came from the ancient dragon seal. Then, a majestic dragon aura that could suppress the 9 heavens and 10 lands swept out from the ancient dragon seal. This is AOD. Qin Yu instantly sensed it and was overjoyed. AOD, who had been in seclusion ever since he found the inheritance in the Dragon Emperor's tomb, had finally awakened. Judging from the aura that AOD exuded, he had already reached the late-stage ancient emperor realm. At this time, it could be put to good use. Immediately, with an intention from Qin Yu, AOD appeared from the ancient divine dragon seal. What is this place? Sensing the terrifying sword aura that filled this secret realm, AOD felt a bone-chilling sense of danger. I don't have time to explain now. My 7 enemies are coming. Go and stop them. After using a secret technique to transmit his voice, a teleportation ancient formation appeared beside Qin Yu. This was the backup plan that he had left behind when he entered this secret realm. He didn't want to be trapped like he had been when he entered the 9 gods deity extermination painting before. Okay, AOD did not ask any more questions and immediately stepped into the teleportation formation. In the next moment, a teleportation formation appeared in the sword tomb filled with violent Tao techniques, and AOD appeared. A teleportation formation? Where did it come from? Although they were fighting crazily, the appearance of the teleportation formation was immediately noticed by Ghost Emperor Tian and the others. Chapter 678. Sure enough, he must be hiding here. Ghost Emperor Tian immediately used his Ghost Dao superpower to shatter Tian's Sword Immortal's destructive sword light with one palm. He then rushed toward the teleportation formation where AOD was. With Ghost Emperor Tian's array Dao attainments, he could immediately carve out the teleportation formation once he got it. By then, he would know where Qin Yu was hiding. Just in time. I'll use you to practice. Sensing the extremely terrifying destructive aura from Ghost Emperor Tian, AOD wasn't afraid at all. He waved his sleeves and punched out. Vast dragon power gathered and turned into an ancient dragon fist. It was the former Dragon Emperor's superpower, the world-destroying dragon fist. Boom! The 2 Tao of destruction met in the void in an instant, and a violent, destructive attack swept across the sword tomb. AOD and Ghost Emperor Tian were forced to retreat. Crack! As AOD retreated, a gust of dragon aura swept out, and the teleportation formation immediately collapsed and turned into dust. Although he didn't know what was going on, he knew who Qin Yu's 7 enemies were. AOD naturally couldn't let Ghost Emperor Tian and the others disturb Qin Yu, who was in seclusion. How Hian Ghost Dao, sky-devouring godly ghost. Seeing the teleportation formation destroyed, Ghost Emperor Tian was furious. Destructive Tao technique power exploded from his body and formed a ferocious giant ghost that was 100 feet tall. The ferocious giant ghost was covered with ferocious ghost runes. If Qin Yu was here, he would definitely recognize it. Those ferocious ghost curses were the immortal devouring ghost curse that almost killed Long Hao. Ghost Emperor Tian had merged the immortal devouring ghost curse into the sky devouring godly ghost. It was needless to say how powerful it was. Immortal Dragon Court. AOD let out a loud dragon roar and transformed into his true form. He turned into an ancient ice crystal Shunron that was a few hundred feet tall. Bone-chilling cold spread out, and the surrounding void was frozen inch by inch. However, after transforming into his true form, AOD didn't use his superpower. In the void behind AOD, countless illusory dragon shadows formed an ancient dragon court between heaven and earth. It was a miniature version of the former Dragon Emperor's eternal dragon nation. It contained the Dragon Emperor's unparalleled divine abilities. Bang! The sky-devouring divine ghost and the eternal dragon court clashed violently in the void, their destructive Tao techniques sweeping across the area like a tsunami. Even the other ancient emperors fighting nearby were affected and had to divert their attention to defend themselves. He can actually block the sky-devouring divine ghost. Ghost Emperor Gentian's face darkened when he saw his trump card being blocked. AOD, who had appeared all of a sudden, was so powerful that he was probably not inferior to him. This made him feel extremely fearful. Heaven's Burier, Sword Immortal, Primal Chaos Ancestor Dragon, Extraterrestrial Devil Paragon, and now this primordial Ice Crystal Dragon. The number of late-stage ancient emperors by Qin Yu's side was truly shocking. It was no wonder that the East Continent's ancient emperors had all lost their lives when they joined forces. At this moment, Ghost Emperor Gentian regretted being too impatient. If he had known that Qin Yu had such powerful helpers, he would have contacted the Mad Dragon Paragon star Luo before coming together. Now that they had alerted the enemy, they had fallen into a situation where they could neither advance nor retreat. Divine Art World Sacrifice. Among the seven, Ghost Emperor Gentian, who was the strongest, went to deal with AOD. The pressure on Heaven's Burier, Sword Immortal, was greatly reduced. Although the four symbols Tao Emperors and Heaven-hating Sword Emperor were also very strong, they were no threat to Heaven's Burier, Sword Immortal. Heaven's Burier, Sword Immortal roared, and the ancient pitch-black sword was unsealed again. A Tao technique fluctuation that clearly did not belong to the Heaven region appeared in the void. Behind Heaven's Burial Sword Immortal, whose face had turned slightly pale, an extremely ancient sword shadow that was several meters long appeared. When the sword shadow appeared, the sword light that was swimming in the sword tomb had no choice but to retreat a little. What a terrifying sword power! As a sword cultivator, Heaven-hating Sword Emperor could feel it more clearly. Inside Heaven's Burier, Sword Immortal's body, an extremely terrifying sword Tao aura had awakened. The terrifying pressure suppressed Heaven-hating Sword Emperor's Sword Tao aura to the extreme. There is no doubt that Heaven's Burier, Sword Immortal, had touched upon a deeper level of Sword Tao. Four symbols heavenly cycle, all things in the world. The four symbols Tao Emperors looked solemn and immediately went all out. Within the four symbols' ancient formation, the mountains, rivers, the earth, the sun, the moon, the stars, and the reincarnation of heaven and earth all whistled and changed. All kinds of strange phenomena appeared as if heaven and earth had just been created, and the concept of chaos was faintly born. Absolute heaven-slaying sword. Slay gods and destroy immortals. Heaven-hating Sword Emperor roared as he held the sword with both hands. The ancient sword that was filled with terrifying killing intent vibrated with a pleasant sword cry. In the next moment, countless ancient swords appeared and revolved around him, forming a myriad sword diagram. Every ancient sword condensed endless desolation, Tao, and destruction, Sword Tao. After the two great killing Taos merged, they emitted a monstrous divine aura. Slash. Heaven's Burier, Sword Immortal roared as the ancient sword shadow behind him merged into the black sword in his hand and suddenly slashed out. Under this sword, a hair-like spatial crack appeared in the void. Heaven's Burier Sword Immortal's move could actually shatter the space of the sword tomb. Kill. The four symbols Tao Emperors and Heaven-hating Sword Emperor gathered all their battle strength and attacked head-on. In this battle, neither of them showed any mercy. They both went all out and vowed to kill Heaven's Burier, Sword Immortal. If they could not suppress Heaven's Burier, Sword Immortal, they would probably have to flee. Rumble. For a time, the sword tomb shook. Even the ancient light gate outside the sword tomb trembled incessantly. Refine. At this moment, in the secret realm, Qin Yu, who had refined the heaven path primordial origin to an extremely critical moment, suddenly roared in a low voice. Boom! Immediately, a terrifying shockwave swept out from Qin Yu's body as Tao power surged incessantly. Qin Yu's cultivation in the Middle Ancient Emperor realm had officially broken through to the Late Ancient Emperor realm after refining the heaven path primordial origin and gaining enlightenment from it. Moreover, although Qin Yu had just entered the Late Ancient Emperor realm and had not recovered to his peak state in his previous life, his battle strength was not any weaker than when he was at his peak state in his previous life. The heaven path primordial origin that Qin Yu had restrained had not been completely refined by Qin Yu. To be precise, Qin Yu had only refined 1/3 of it. Just 1/3 of it was enough to raise Qin Yu's cultivation from the Middle Ancient Emperor realm to the Late Ancient Emperor realm. One could imagine how powerful the heaven path primordial origin was. However, when Qin Yu wanted to completely refine the rest of the heaven path primordial origin and take the opportunity to enter the Great Ancient Emperor realm from the Late Ancient Emperor realm, the feeling of blockage that Qin Yu had experienced in his previous life appeared once again. No matter how Qin Yu circulated the ancient battle dragon art, he could not break through the blockage. It was as if there was an invisible wall that blocked the path to the Late Ancient Emperor realm. Qin Yu was unable to cross that barrier. Chapter 679. It's like this again. Looks like my previous life's enlightenment was not an illusion. The immemorial battle dragon art has indeed reached a certain limit. Qin Yu opened his eyes. There was a pondering expression flickering in his eyes. In his previous life, he had refined thousands of dragon tribe's super skills. Logically speaking, with the immemorial battle dragon art, as long as he refined the dragon blood, he would be able to continuously raise his cultivation. He should have long surpassed the advanced ancient emperor realm. However, Qin Yu was stuck at the advanced ancient emperor realm in his previous life. Although refining the dragon tribe origin bloodline could increase Qin Yu's battle strength continuously, he could not break through his cultivation level. I don't believe it. Qin Yu's eyes flashed fiercely. He sat down with his legs crossed again and frantically refined the remaining heaven path True Yuan. Qin Yu's frantic refinement did not remove the blockage in his cultivation level. Instead, it became even more intense. Even Qin Yu's meridians were experiencing intense pain. Qin Yu gritted his teeth and ignored the blockage and pain. He continued to refine the heaven path True Yuan. Bang! When Qin Yu's meridians were being shredded inch by inch, Qin Yu could clearly feel that some kind of seal within the immemorial battle dragon art had been undone, although the blockage and pain did not disappear. However, Qin Yu was able to sense that some sort of change had occurred to the immemorial battle dragon art. When Qin Yu activated the immemorial battle dragon art again, he could vaguely feel that there was something in the east that was resonating with the immemorial battle dragon art. Could it be the immortal treasury? Qin Yu mumbled to himself after sensing it carefully. Qin Yu had been to the immortal treasury before and knew its location. It was in the boundless sea region in the east of the heaven region. It seemed like he would have to make a trip to the immortal treasury after settling all the grudges in the heaven region. Although he had not found all 3 ancient immortal tokens, one of them was with Xing Luo. After he took his revenge on Xing Luo and the others, he would have collected most of the ancient immortal tokens. Since you've taken the initiative to deliver yourselves to me, it saves me the trouble of looking for you. Qin Yu stood up. Pure dragon energy surged in his body, and his eyes flashed with a cold light. After a few breaths of time, Qin Yu, who had fully recovered from his injuries, took a step forward, and runes spread out. With a flash of light, Qin Yu disappeared. Rumble. Outside the secret realm, in the sword tomb, The earth-shattering battle was becoming more and more tragic. Both the heaven-suppressing ghost monarch, the four symbols down monarch, and the others, the sky-bearing sword immortal, AOD, and the others were trying their best to kill their opponents. When 11 late ancient emperors fought, even the space of the sword tomb, which was filled with boundless sword might, was unable to withstand such destructive Tao arts. Suddenly, the heaven-suppressing ghost emperor, the four symbols Tao monarch, and the North monarch disarray turned their heads to the side. Above the sword tomb, a figure had appeared out of nowhere and was coldly looking at them. Dragon God, Dizun. When the heaven-suppressing ghost emperor, the heaven-suppressing ghost monarch, and the others, as well as the blood-fiend spirit emperor, narrowed their eyes. The person who had appeared was naturally Qinyu. However, at this moment, Qinyu had regained the appearance of his previous life. Now, the person who had appeared was not only Qinyu, but also the dragon god Dizun, who had once ruled the heaven region. He's really still alive. Following Qinyu's appearance, the great battle that was originally berserk and destructive appeared to stop for a moment. The heaven-suppressing ghost monarch and the others were unable to conceal their fear. Even though their purpose was to kill Qinyu is still alive. However, when Qinyu stood in front of them, the invisible and terrifying aura he brought made their hearts palpitate. What's wrong? You seem surprised to see that I'm still alive. Qinyu's cold and indifferent gaze swept across the heaven-suppressing ghost monarch and the others. The heaven-suppressing ghost monarch, the four symbols Tao Emperor, and North Emperor Wan, who had ambushed him in the graveyard of the immortal god, had the same look of disbelief as the seven-star ancient emperor. It seemed that the three of them, like the seven-star ancient emperor, did not know how he could be reincarnated after his soul had been destroyed. I'm indeed surprised. How did you survive? Who is helping you in the dark? The heaven-suppressing ghost monarch took a deep breath and looked at Qinyu with a dignified expression. If it was not for someone secretly helping Qinyu in the graveyard of the immortal god, how could Qinyu survive? However, who was it that was able to allow Qinyu to escape with his life in front of 13 late-stage ancient emperors and dozens of middle-stage ancient emperors? Why do you need to know so much when you are about to die? Qinyu sneered. In a flash, he rushed towards the heaven-suppressing ghost monarch with a long spear in his hand. Humph! Although I don't know how you survived, do you think you are still the dragon god emperor who swept across the 9 continents in the heaven domain? The heaven-suppressing ghost monarch, who was targeted by Qinyu, twitched his eyes. AOD was eyeing him from the side. If he tried to escape, he would definitely be killed. The heaven-suppressing ghost monarch roared and rushed towards Qinyu with a terrifying ghost Tao secret skill. AOD was not in a hurry to attack AOD. The aura that Qinyu exuded now made even AOD's heart palpitate. The heaven-suppressing ghost monarch, who was on par with AOD, was naturally no match for Qinyu. Roar! After a loud dragon roar, the ghost Tao secret skill cast by the heaven-suppressing ghost monarch was devoured by Qinyu's sky-devouring dragon seal. Then, Qinyu, who was using Azure Dragon battling the heavens, unleashed 9 Hell's Purgatory, Apocalyptic Sacred Thunder, and other Destruction Dragon Clan super skills. Bang! The heaven-suppressing ghost monarch was beaten back by Qinyu in one move. He could not fight back at all. If the heaven-suppressing ghost monarch was at his peak, he might be able to fight against Qinyu. Unfortunately, the heaven-suppressing ghost monarch had fought with the Sky Burier, Sword Immortal, and AOD. His cultivation had been greatly depleted. On the other hand, Qinyu had just broken through and was in his best condition. Puff! Qinyu thrust his spear and pierced the heaven-suppressing ghost monarch's protective ghost chi. The spear shattered the heaven-suppressing ghost monarch's right arm. The destruction Tao secret skill exploded. The heaven-suppressing ghost monarch was sent flying and vomited blood. His aura was obviously weakened. Immortal artifact. Looking at the shattered, immemorial battle armor on his body, The heaven-suppressing ghost monarch looked at the chaotic dragon spear in Qin Yu's hand in horror. His immemorial battle armor was the guardian divine treasure of the Ghost Clan. Even a late-stage ancient emperor could not destroy it. It was because of the immemorial battle armor's heaven-defying defense that the Ghost Emperors of the Ghost Emperor's Sacred Island could stand tall in the central continent. But now, the immemorial battle armor, which was most likely made by an ancient immortal, was destroyed by Qin Yu. This naturally made the heaven-suppressing ghost monarch wonder. 8 diagrams transforming into dragon. Qin Yu did not give the heaven-suppressing ghost monarch any time to react. He immediately used a shocking killing move. Qin Yu, surrounded by chaotic dragon Qi, turned into Shenron and charged toward the heaven-suppressing ghost monarch. Chapter 680. Swoosh. Ghost Emperor Zhentian's hair stood on end as a deadly sense of crisis rose in his heart. Without hesitation, Ghost Emperor Zhentian immediately used his ultimate move to save his life. His body exploded and turned into billowing ghost Qi that scattered in all directions. Seal. Unfortunately, Qin Yu, who had fought with Ghost Emperor Zhentian several times in his previous life, was familiar with Ghost Emperor Zhentian's moves. After transforming into a dragon, Qin Yu slammed out his huge dragon claw and sealed the area. In the center of the dragon claw, the chaotic dragon spear turned into a ray of chaotic light and broke through the void. In an instant, it pierced through the void. Slash! In the next moment, the sound of flesh being pierced through rang out. The ghost Qi that had scattered in all directions paused at this moment. In the place where Qin Yu had pierced through with the chaotic dragon spear, a figure filled with ghost Qi appeared. It was Ghost Emperor Zhentian. However, Ghost Emperor Zhentian's body had been pierced through by the chaotic dragon spear. Destructive dragon power swept out and filled the area around him. In the blink of an eye, Ghost Emperor Zhentian was killed. His emperor's soul exploded, and his soul dispersed. Qin Yu's cultivation had recovered to the late-stage ancient emperor realm. After using the Azure Dragon Battle the Heavens, his combat strength had increased by more than 10 times. Then, he used the 8 diagrams to transform into a dragon and entered the magnificent dragon state. In addition, the power of the chaotic dragon spear as a quasi-immortal artifact had also increased Qin Yu's combat strength. In the face of such destructive combat strength, Ghost Emperor Zhentian, who was also a late-stage ancient emperor, was naturally unable to resist Qin Yu. Ghost Emperor Zhentian is dead. Seeing Ghost Emperor Zhentian, who was killed by Qin Yu in an instant and had his soul scattered, the 4 symbols Dao Emperors, Emperor Luan Bei, and the other 5 turned pale. Their bodies turned cold as if they had fallen into an ice cave. Among the 7 of them, Ghost Emperor Zhentian's cultivation was the strongest. Even the Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor had been killed so easily. How could they survive? After all, Qin Yu was not the only one they had to face. Sky Burier, Sword Immortal, AOD, the Chaotic Ancestor Dragon, and the Ancestor Demon Statue were not easy to deal with. Go! The 6 Dao Emperors of 4 symbols no longer had the will to fight. They immediately flew toward the entrance of the Sword Tomb at top speed. Sword Spirit. Qin Yu's heart moved. The crack in the ancient seal, which hadn't been repaired after being broken, instantly recovered and disappeared into the void under the 4 symbols Dao Emperor's piercing gaze. When they could no longer find any signs of the gap in the ancient seal, the 6 Dao Emperors of 4 symbols felt an unprecedented sense of despair and danger. Since you're already here, why are you in such a hurry to leave? A cold, indifferent, and emotionless voice rang out. It was Qin Yu, who had transformed into Shenron, who suddenly tore through the air and chased after them. AOD, the primal Chaos Ancestor Dragon, and the Devil Ancestor Golem stopped watching the show and followed closely behind Qin Yu. Only Sky Burier, Sword Immortal didn't attack this time. The 6 Dao Emperors of 4 symbols didn't have much enmity with Sky Burier, Sword Immortal. Now that Qin had appeared, Sky Burier Sword Immortal was naturally happy to be idle. Of course, the main reason was that Qin Yu's side had an overwhelming battle strength. Rumble. Soon, a violent and destructive battle broke out once again. However, compared to the previous battle where they were evenly matched, the current situation was completely different. This time, with Qin Yu's help, the 6 Dao Emperors of 4 symbols were suppressed to the point where they couldn't fight back at all, just like the Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor. Not long after, among the 6, Northern Emperor Luan was killed by Qin Yu. After that, the ancient mystic demon emperor, who had transformed into a giant demon, couldn't resist Qin Yu's spear and died instantly. The Heaven Spite Sword Emperor cooperated with the Dao Emperors of 4 symbols to launch a sneak attack on Qin Yu. But AOD and the Primal Chaos Ancestor Dragon seized the opportunity to severely injure them. They were then killed by the Devil Ancestor Golem with a punch. As for the Dao Emperors of 4 symbols, the Blood Fiend Spirit Emperor, and the Black Ice Heavenly Emperor, they couldn't escape either. They died one after another at the hands of Qin Yu and the others. At this point, the 7 ancient emperors of Middle Ground who had joined forces had completely lost their lives. After killing the 7 ancient emperors, Qin Yu's expression suddenly changed as he was collecting the spoils of war. He pointed his finger, and an interspatial ring with an ancient seal flew out from the Blood Fiend Spirit Emperor's body. As Qin Yu was breaking the seal, his eyes flashed with a radiant light. Qin Yu moved his right hand, and an ancient immortal token appeared in his palm. It was the DUI Ancient Immortal Token that the Blood Fiend Spirit Emperor had obtained. In this way, apart from the Earth Ancient Immortal Tokens and the Zhun Ancient Immortal Tokens, Qin Yu had collected 6 of the 8 Ancient Immortal Tokens. To Qin Yu, this could be said to be a pleasant surprise. After the battle, the Chaotic Ancestor Dragon returned to the Origin Dragon world, and the Ancestor Demon statue was summoned back by Qin Yu. AOD sat cross-legged in the void and seemed to be comprehending the inheritance of the Dragon Emperor. As for the Sky Burier Sword Immortal, he couldn't enter the secret realm. However, the Eternal Sword Mound was filled with thousands of Sword Dao concepts. It was still an opportunity for the Sky Burier Sword Immortal. After throwing the bodies of the Sky, suppressing Ghost Emperor, and the others into the Sumru Ring for the Skeleton Ghost King to refine, Qin Yu also sat down cross-legged. During this trip to the Eternal Sword Mound, not only had he subdued the spirit of the Sword Mound and awakened Long Hao, but he had also obtained the supreme inheritance of the Sword Emperor from another region. Qin Yu's cultivation had also broken through to the late Ancient Emperor realm. Other than Xing Luo, among the 12 ancient emperors, there were only Emperor God Xian Yu, Emperor Taiyin, and Great Sun Heavenly Emperor from the North region. In addition, he had also obtained an Ancient Immortal Token. It would be one step easier for Qin Yu to go to the Immortal Treasure in the future. It could be said that Qin Yu had gained a lot this time. As Qin Yu and the others waited, after half a month, Long Hao, who had been in the secret realm the entire time, finally walked out. When the Sky Burier Sword Immortal saw Long Hao, sword light flashed in his eyes. At this moment, Long Hao's body was surrounded by tangible sword essence. The strength of the sword essence had far surpassed the Heaven Path Sword Domain realm. Even the sword soul that the Sky Burier Sword Immortal had obtained in his previous life couldn't be compared to Long Hao's sword essence. Qin Yu's expression changed slightly. In addition to the terrifying sword essence surrounding Long Hao, there was also a strong fluctuation of Heaven Path True Origin. It appeared that the stone tablet had already been subdued by Long Hao. Master! After Long Hao came out, he retracted his sword essence and bowed respectfully to Qin Yu. How is it? Can you control the Eternal Sword Mound? Qin Yu asked. Long Hao smiled and clenched his right fist. Immediately, the entire Eternal Sword Tomb began to tremble. Countless strands of sword intent, sword shadows, and sword light converged towards Long Hao like rivers flowing into an ocean. Seeing this, the spirit of the sword mound appeared and immediately opened the boundary of the sword mound. allowing Qin Yu and the others to leave. Long Hao had just inherited his master's power and wasn't familiar with controlling the Eternal Sword Mound. If he wasn't careful, Qin Yu and the others might be implicated. Whoosh! However, just as the spirit of the Sword Tomb opened the Sword Tomb's barrier, a pitch-black ray of light suddenly flashed in the air and disappeared into the void. Mm? Qin Yu instantly detected it. Before that black light disappeared, he pointed with his finger. A black ray of light was shot into that pitch-black light. Chapter 681. Was that Ghost Emperor Zhentian? The Sky Burier, Sword Immortal, AOD, and Long Hao immediately sensed it. Other than Ghost Emperor Zhentian, no one else could have sensed the ghost chi fluctuation from the black light. Underestimated him. Qin Yu was also surprised. He did not expect the Ghost Emperor Zhentian to leave such a trick behind, even though his soul had already dispersed. However, he had already used a secret technique and could sense where the Ghost Emperor Zhentian was. He was not afraid that the Ghost Emperor Zhentian, who was only his soul, could escape from him. Thinking of this, Qin Yu seemed to have thought of something. He moved his right hand, and the corpse of the Ghost Emperor Zhentian appeared in his interspatial ring. After careful inspection, Qin Yu found that although the corpse of the Ghost Emperor Zhentian still had flesh and blood, it was obviously refined with a secret technique. The Ghost Emperor Zhentian seemed to have left more than one trick behind. He was indeed a cunning old fox. Then, Qin Yu, the Sky Burier, Sword Immortal, and AOD left the Sword Tomb and appeared outside the Eternal Sword Tomb. At this moment, there were figures all over the Eternal Sword Tomb who were affected and expelled from the Eternal Sword Tomb. The experts who had come to explore were all shocked. They discussed among themselves and did not know what had happened. Rumble. Under Long Hao's control, the Eternal Sword Tomb, which was originally tens of thousands of miles wide, became smaller and smaller. The Sword Will and the broken sword of the Eternal Sword Tomb seemed to be psychic at this moment. They turned into streaks of sword light and disappeared into the depths of the Eternal Sword Tomb. In less than 15 minutes, the Eternal Sword Tomb became a thumb-sized sword mark that was branded on Long Hao's right hand. Could it be that the Eternal Sword Tomb has been subdued by someone? Does this mean that the inheritance of the invincible sword cultivator has been taken? Who is that person? He doesn't seem to be among the sword cultivators at the late ancient emperor realm in the 9 provinces of the Heaven Domain. The experts who were watching and discussing in the void looked at Long Hao with different expressions. Although they were greedy, they did not dare to make a move when they sensed that Long Hao was at the late ancient emperor realm. Whoosh! After putting away the Eternal Sword Mound, Long Hao ignored the surrounding martial artists and flew in front of Qin Yu and the other two. Master, what's the plan next? Long Hao asked Qin Yu. Looking at Ghost Emperor Zhentian's direction, he must have gone straight to the South Continent. He must be trying to ally with the ancient emperor of the South Continent. Let's go there directly. Qin Yu sensed Ghost Emperor Zhentian's location and sneered. Ghost Emperor Zhentian had left the Divine Land in just a moment. Obviously, he had left the teleportation formation there. Now that Qin Yu's cultivation had recovered to the advanced stage of the ancient emperor realm, and the matter with Long Hao and the others had been settled, it was time for revenge. His original plan was to wait for the ancient emperor in the Middle Continent until the end. However, now that the Middle Continent had sent the ancient emperor to his death, Qin Yu's plan had to change. Of course, if Ghost Emperor Zhentian hadn't escaped, Qin Yu would have gone to North State to deal with Celestial Emperor Great Sun first. However, now that Ghost Emperor Zhentian had escaped, the news that he was still alive would definitely spread. Of course, he had to fish big fish. He would deal with the 2 ancient emperors of the South Continent first, then the Great Sun Celestial Emperor, and finally Xing Luo, who had the ancient immortal token. Heaven Region, South Continent, Divine Palace of Xuanyu Holy Dynasty. Dragon God Emperor is really still alive. Several figures gathered in the Divine Palace. Each of them was a famous ancient emperor in the Heaven Region. However, the atmosphere was as cold as ice. Even the air seemed to freeze, and the atmosphere was extremely oppressive. The person sitting on the main seat of the divine palace was the ruler of Xuanyu Holy Dynasty, Emperor God Emperor Xuanyu. Other than him, Emperor Taiyan was also present. The last one was the ghost Emperor Tian, who was supposed to be killed by Qin Yu and only had a soul body left. However, although ghost Emperor Tian's aura was weak, his soul was still intact. No one knew what mysterious technique he had used. Among the 7 who went to the Divine Lands, other than me, the 4 symbols Tao Emperors and the others are all dead. If I hadn't prepared the Ghost Hunter technique, I would have died as well. Even now, you still don't believe that he's still alive? Humph. You guys were also involved in killing him. Now that he's back, do you think he'll let you guys go? Hearing Emperor God Emperor Xuanyu's doubtful words, Ghost Emperor Tian said coldly. His tone was very unpleasant. Before going to the Divine Lands, he had sent a message to Xuanyu Holy Dynasty and Emperor Taiyan, asking them to join forces with the ancient emperors of the South Continent. However, Emperor God Emperor Xuanyu and Emperor Taiyan had refused. Now that the ancient emperors of the Middle Continent were all dead, Qin Yu's next target would definitely be the South Continent. If they didn't act together now, they would definitely be killed by Qin Yu one by one, just like Emperor God Tian Yuan and the other ancient emperors of the East Continent. Ghost Emperor, it's useless to be angry now. What we need to do now is to think of a way to deal with the danger before us. The monarch of Taiyan said with a solemn expression. After seeing Ghost Emperor Tian's miserable appearance, Emperor Taiyan used a forbidden technique to deduce that Qin Yu was still alive. He believed that Qin Yu was still alive. It's not that we didn't make any preparations before this. On the contrary, we've already joined forces with 15 ancient emperors to deal with the invasion of the extraterritorial demon race and the ancient demon race. Even if the Dragon God Emperor really comes, we'll be able to deal with him. Emperor God Emperor Xuanyu said. Although they were skeptical about the news that Qin Yu was still alive, it wasn't a small matter after all. Therefore, they had been working in the dark for the past few months. 15 ancient emperors, including the 3 of them, made a total of 18 ancient emperors. This battle strength was even more terrifying than when they had ambushed Qin Yu in the graveyard of immortal gods. It could be said that all the ancient emperors of the South Continent, including Emperor God Emperor Xuanyu and Emperor Taiyan, had gathered together. What about the Dragon God Emperor? Have you contacted him? Hearing that there were 15 ancient emperors, Ghost Emperor Tian heaved a sigh of relief and asked about Xing Luo. Among the ancient emperors of the Heaven Domain, other than Qin Yu, who had somehow survived, Xing Luo was the one that Ghost Emperor Tian was most wary of. If the Star Luo clan were to join them, their chances of success would be much higher. I still can't contact him. I wonder where he went. Emperor Taiyan shook his head. Ghost Emperor Tian frowned. When he suspected that Qin Yu was still alive, he immediately sent a message to Xing Luo. It had been several months, and Xing Luo should have received the news. Why hadn't he responded? Could it be that there was something more important than Qin Yu's matter? Chapter 682. During the battle, Dragon God Emperor's soul should have been completely destroyed, and he should not have been able to use a secret skill to survive. But now, for some unknown reason, he is still alive. Do you think this matter is related to the Berserk Dragon Sovereign? Emperor God Xian Yu suspected that Qin Yu's escape had something to do with Xing Luo. Back then, for some unknown reason, Star Luo came to join hands with Qin Yu and the others who had grievances with him. As they had offended Qin Yu and were afraid of Qin Yu's strength, they were afraid that they would die after Qin Yu. Hence, Emperor God Xian Yu and the others had agreed to join forces with Xing Luo. However, they were unable to understand why Star Luo wanted to attack Qin Yu the entire time. One must know that at that time, the relationship between Qin Yu and Star Luo was as close as brothers. Furthermore, the 2 of them were of the same master. That shouldn't be the case. Back then, in order to deal with the Dragon God Emperor, the Mad Dragon Emperor risked his cultivation to use a forbidden technique. It was clear that he was determined to kill. If he wanted to save the Dragon God Emperor, there was no need for him to take such a risk. Ghost Emperor Gentian pondered for a long time as though he was recalling the battle. Then he shook his head. It was possible that the other ancient emperors who had participated in the battle had other intentions. However, Xing Luo had made it clear that he did not want to let Qin Yu go. Virum. Ghost Emperor Gentian's expression changed as soon as he finished his words. He opened his palm, and there was a twisted ghost tattoo that was trembling slightly. Ghost Emperor Gentian had paid a great price to refine this ghost tattoo. It could sense the fluctuation of the immortal devouring ghost curse. Although the immortal devouring ghost curse in Long Hao's body had been dissolved, there was still some fluctuation of the immortal devouring ghost curse left in Long Hao's body. Because of this, Ghost Emperor Gentian was able to follow Qin Yu into the Eternal Sword Mound after leaving the Central Province. Unfortunately, Ghost Emperor Gentian had wanted to kill Qin Yu in the Eternal Sword Tomb. Unexpectedly, he had lost his life in the Eternal Sword Tomb. They are heading towards the south region. I'm afraid they want to kill all of you before you can react. Ghost Emperor Gentian looked at Emperor God Xin Yu and Emperor Tan. The reason he had come directly to the southern continent was because he knew that Qin Yu had placed a restriction in his body. If they had returned to the Ghost Emperor's sacred island, they would have nowhere to run. That was why they had come to look for Emperor God Xin Yu and Emperor Tai Yan. We are not the trash of the East Continent. It's not that easy to kill us in the South Continent. Emperor God Xin Yu's face changed, and he snorted coldly. He immediately stood up and sent out a few secret letters. The Emperor Tan Emperor didn't hesitate and immediately sent out a secret message. As a precaution, they had gathered all the ancient emperors at Xuanyu Holy Dynasty. Now, as long as he sent out a secret message, they would gather. Following the actions of Emperor God Xian Yu and the others, the entire Xian Yu Holy Dynasty entered a state of high alert as countless experts gathered. The entire South Continent's forces were shaken because of this. When the sun was setting in the west and the sky was turning dark, a terrifying aura swept over from the border of the Xian Yu Divine Dynasty. In just a few breaths' time, the terrifying aura shot across half of the Xian Yu Holy Dynasty like a meteor and arrived at the imperial city at the heart of the Xian Yu Holy Dynasty. They're here, in the imperial city of the Xian Yu Holy Dynasty, above the central palace. Emperor God Xian Yu, Emperor Tai Yan, and Ghost Emperor Gentian were led by 15 people with terrifying auras. Although these people's cultivation couldn't be compared to the four symbols Dao emperors from the Middle Continent, they were all almighties who had entered the later stage of the ancient emperor realm. In the 9 continents of the heaven domain, they were the top experts. That's quite a lineup. Qin Yu and the others were surprised to see the 18 almighties of the ancient emperors in the sky above the Xian Yu Holy Dynasty. However, he was only a little surprised. There was no fear in his expression. Qin Yu, Sky Burier, Sword Immortal, Long Hao, and AOD weren't ordinary later stage ancient emperors. Their fighting strength was comparable to Ghost Emperor Gentian's. Of course, they weren't afraid of the later stage ancient emperors from the South Continent. That person. No way. Could that be Dragon God Emperor? When they saw that it was Qin Yu and his brothers who had arrived, the gazes of the southern province's ancient emperors all landed on Qin Yu. Immediately, those late-stage ancient emperors that recognized Qin Yu were all incomparably shocked. Although thousands of years had passed, these later-stage ancient emperors had lived for thousands of years. Naturally, they wouldn't forget the Dragon God Emperor who had dominated the heaven domain and suppressed the extraterritorial demon tribe. Back then, the Dragon God Emperor had disappeared mysteriously. Some rumors said that the Dragon God Emperor had fallen. However, there were also rumors that the Dragon God Emperor had surpassed the limits of the ancient Emperor realm and left the heaven domain. However, no matter which rumor it was, there was no concrete evidence. Now that Qin Yu had appeared in front of them, they couldn't believe it. In addition to being shocked, they looked at Emperor God, Xian Yu, and Emperor Dian simultaneously. They had been invited because Emperor God Xianyu had said that the extraterritorial demon tribe and the ancient demon tribe had joined forces and sent experts to invade the South Continent. Could the dragon god Emperor be the extraterritorial demon tribe and the ancient demon tribe that Emperor God Xianyu and Emperor Tai Yin had mentioned? Emperor God Xianyu, Emperor Tai Yin, although we haven't met for thousands of years, there's no need to welcome me with such a grand ceremony. Xianyu took a step forward and looked at Emperor God Xianyu coldly. Dragon God Emperor, you colluded with the ancient demon tribe and tried to invade the heaven domain. Of course we have to welcome you together. Hearing Xianyu's words, Emperor God Xianyu said coldly. He knew that he couldn't hide Xianyu's identity, so he called him by his name. Of course, his words were meant for the other later stage ancient emperors. At this time, the ancient emperors couldn't be allowed to leave. Colluding with the ancient demon tribe? Is that why so many people were fooled by you guys? Xianyu chuckled. He finally understood why Emperor God Xianyu and Emperor Tai Yin could gather 15 later stage ancient emperors. The invasion of the extraterritorial demon tribe had just ended. At this time, Emperor God Xianyu and Emperor Tai Yin were using the ancient demon tribe as an excuse. I'm here today for a reason. My grudge with Emperor God Xianyu, Emperor Tai Yin, and Ghost Emperor Tian has nothing to do with you. Are you sure you want to get involved? Xianyu looked at the dozen-plus late-stage ancient emperors and said with an indifferent expression, although Emperor God Xianyu and the others had teamed up with 15 ancient emperors, their fighting power was equivalent to 18 later-stage ancient emperors. However, Xianyu wasn't afraid at all. The fighting power before him was much stronger than when they had surrounded him in the immortal god graveyard. However, Xianyu wasn't in the same state as when he had been ambushed by Xing Luo. Xianyu's fighting power was at its peak now. Moreover, Xianyu had the help of Buried Sky, Sword Immortal, Long Hao, AOD, Ancestor Demon Statue, and Primal Chaos Ancestor Dragon. Today, no matter what, Emperor God Xianyu and the other two wouldn't be able to leave alive. Chapter 683. Personal Grudge. Hearing Xianyu's words, the 15 late-stage ancient emperors were in an uproar as they communicated through voice transmissions. If the ancient demon tribe was really invading, they would naturally work together to drive them away. However, if this was a grudge between the Dragon God Hierarch and Emperor God Xianyu, they did not need to get involved. The consequences of offending the Dragon God Hierarch were not to be trifled with. In the entire 9 continents of the Heaven Domain, only the Dragon God Hierarch could kill a late-stage ancient emperor with ease. Do you think you can fool us with just a few words? Everyone, take a look. Emperor God Xianyu snorted as he saw the uproar among the late-stage ancient emperors. A light mirror appeared in his hand. In the light mirror, scenes of battle were displayed. It was the scene of the Sky Burier, Sword Immortal, AOD, the Chaotic Ancestor Dragon, and the Ancestor Demon Statue, fighting the 4 symbols Dao Emperor, Emperor Luan Bei, and the other ancient emperors of the Middle Region. Obviously, the Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor, who had participated in the battle, had used some secret technique to seal the scenes of the battle. It is indeed the aura of the ancient demon tribe. Does this mean that the Dragon God Hierarch disappeared for so many years because he went to the ancient demon tribe? How is this possible? With the Dragon God Hierarch's cultivation, why would he go to the ancient demon tribe? Could it be that the Dragon God Hierarch's original body is from the ancient demon tribe? The 15 late-stage ancient emperors were shocked when they saw the scenes of the battle in the light mirror. The Ancestor Demon Statue exuded a vast demonic aura. It was the demonic chi unique to the ancient demon tribe. The demonic chi of the ancient demon tribe was different from the demonic chi of the extraterritorial demon tribe. Strictly speaking, the ancient demon tribe was a type of demonic cultivator. They could absorb the spiritual energy of the heaven domain as well as the extraterritorial demon chi. This was because they could refine both spiritual energy and demonic chi into their unique demonic chi. This was one of the main reasons why the ancient demon tribe could still prosper despite being banished to the extraterritorial realm. Everyone should know that the Red Moon sovereign died at the hands of a demonic cultivator of the spiritual state. Even now, we still haven't figured out the origin of that demonic cultivator, and the spiritual state fell into the hands of that demonic cultivator. Previously, there had been several ancient emperor wars in the East Continent, and as many as 7 ancient emperors have fallen. The one who had massacred the East Continent was this bastard who had teamed up with the ancient demon tribe. His intentions couldn't be clearer. Looking at the expressions of the 15 late-stage ancient emperors, Emperor God Xianyu revealed a cold smile and said loudly. As expected, after hearing what Emperor God Xianyu had said, the 15 late-stage ancient emperors who were originally wavering became solemn, and they looked at Xianyu and the other 3. Since it doesn't make sense, then don't blame me. Upon seeing this, Xianyu knew that it was useless to say anything more. Surging dragon aura erupted from his body as a vast and frightening dragon might swept out in all directions. Such power, feeling the towering power that Xianyu had given out, Emperor God Xianyu, who was smiling coldly, couldn't help but twitch his eyelids. No wonder Ghost Emperor Gentian and the others were in such a state. Xianyu's power wasn't any weaker than it had been back then. Luckily, Ghost Emperor Gentian had informed them in advance. Otherwise, with just the 3 of them, they would definitely be dead. Virum vroom vroom. Just as Xianyu and AOD were giving out their frightening dragon might, Zhongtian Sword Fairy and Long Hao took action as well. 2 different sword essences that were vast and frightening shot up to the sky and swept across the 9 heavens, causing everyone to tremble in fear. At the same time, Chaotic Ancestor Dragon and Ancestor Demon Statue were summoned by Xianyu. The 6 of them brought with them a vast and frightening power. They were like 6 celestial demons that had been born, and they pounced on the 18 late-stage ancient emperors. Divine Thunder Formation. Sensing the overflowing destructive might emitted by Xianyu and the other 3, God Emperor Xianyu, who had an extremely serious expression, immediately activated the great protective array of the Xuanyu Divine Dynasty. Rolling lightning spread out crazily, with the imperial city of the Xianyu Holy Dynasty as the center. It covered a radius of tens of thousands of miles and turned into a vast divine thunder formation. Xianyu and the other 3 were also covered by the divine thunder formation. The frightening power of lightning was brewing, ready to unleash a destructive attack at any time. The divine thunder formation was obtained by the ancestors of a Xianyu Holy Dynasty from an immortal ancient ruin. It was said that it was a divine formation created by an ancient immortal. Later on, the ancestors of Xianyu Holy Dynasty moved the remnants of the immortal formation back and gave birth to the divine thunder formation. The power of the divine formation was frightening. It had once killed a late-stage ancient emperor. Haotian Ghostly Path kill. Ghost Emperor Gentian roared as he cast the Haotian Ghostly Path. He formed a ferocious giant ghost and led the charge. The void boiled as thousands of ghostly chi seeped into the void. The power was obviously stronger than the Sword Tomb in the Eternal Sword Tomb. Tai Chi Dark Heaven. Emperor God Xianyu's body flashed as he turned into a ray of light and rushed out. As he rushed out, the yin and yang light around him intertwined and formed a Tai Chi divine diagram. The yin and yang energy surged in the Tai Chi divine diagram. One could clearly see that there were light spots all over the Xianyu Holy Dynasty. They pierced through the void and merged into the Tai Chi divine diagram. Emperor God Xianyu cultivated the path of faith. This was because the ancestors of Xianyu Holy Dynasty were ancient gods who had ascended to godhood through the power of faith. Heavenly Secret Skill. Buddha's Light Illumination. Heavenly Master Skill. When the 15 late-stage ancient emperors saw the ancestor demon statue, their doubts disappeared. They followed Ghost Emperor Gentian and Emperor God Xianyu and rushed out. The power of the 17 late-stage ancient emperors had turned the void within 100,000 miles of Xianyu Holy Dynasty into a zone of destruction. Countless martial artists and living beings on the ground felt as if the sky was about to collapse. They were terrified and could not hide their fear. More than 20 late-stage ancient emperors were fighting. Such a terrifying internal battle had not happened in the history of the Heaven region for thousands of years. Without a doubt, the battle today would shock the entire 9 states of the Heaven region. Even the extraterritorial demon race would be shocked. Such a terrifying battle was comparable to a large-scale invasion. Great Yin technique. Emperor Taiyin did not rush out. Instead, he formed a series of hand seals. His speed was so fast that it was dazzling. Then, he tapped with his finger, and there were divine lights that hit Ghost Emperor Zhen Tian, Emperor God Xianyu, and the others who were charging out. Emperor Taiyan's divine light did not cause any injuries to Ghost Emperor Zhen Tian and the others. Of course, it did not increase the power of the attacks. However, when Ghost Emperor Zhen Tian and the others defended against the destructive attacks of Qin Yu and the others, the divine light would reverse the attacks of Qin Yu and the others to the original state of true essence and Tao skill. In other words, it would instantly dissolve the attacks. Such a method naturally gave Ghost Emperor Zhen Tian and the others another extraordinary method. They could use the time when Qin Yu and the others' secret skills and divine skills were reversed and neutralized. They could then use their destructive killer moves. In an instant, Qin Yu and the other 5 appeared to be somewhat flustered. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.